This podcast may contain explicit language. Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is? Promising Young Woman is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
And tonight, for our 294th episode and our season finale, we discuss Promising Young Woman from 2020, celebrating its 5th anniversary, written and directed by Emerald Fennell, cinematography by Benjamin, I'm going to butcher this name, Krakoon, music by Anthony Willis, editing by Frederick Torval. I think that's right, but there were a lot of umlauts and accents and other things above each of these names, so I have no idea. Starring Carey Mulligan as Cassandra Thomas, Bo Burnham as Ryan, Allison Brie as Madison, Clancy Brown as Stanley Thomas, Jennifer Coolidge as Susan Thomas, Laverne Cox as Gail, Chris Lowell as Al Monroe, Molly Shannon as Mrs. Fisher, Connie Britton as Dean Walker, Adam Brody as Jerry, Max Greenfield as Joe, Ray Nicholson as Jim, and Christopher Mintz-Plasse as Neil. Background for the movie: Promising Young Woman was released on December 25th, 2020, after initially debuting at the Sundance Film Festival earlier that year. On a reported budget of $10 million, the film would gross over $18.5 million to finish number 72 at the worldwide box office for 2020. At the time, it was met with widespread critical acclaim, mostly for Carey Mulligan and Emerald Fennell's performances. Promising Young Woman would go on to be nominated for 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Director for Fennell, Actress for Carey Mulligan, and Editing for Torval, winning for Original Screenplay for Emerald Fennell. Since its original release, the film has come under significant scrutiny during the post-Me Too era about its feminist credentials. Currently holds a 90% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 72 score on Metacritic, and a 3.7 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Of course, we can't discuss this by ourselves. That would be way too dry. So we welcome back our returning celebrity guests, the hosts of the Never Seen It pod and all of its various iterations and forms, making their now 3rd appearance on the show to date. Please welcome back Trent and Betsy. Go!
Oh, hi.
What's up, guys?
Hello.
How have you been?
Oh, we're good. We're excited to be here because this is a movie we quite enjoy. So when I saw it on the list, I was like, yes, please.
Yeah, and in the pantheon of our show, this was actually the 2nd ever episode we ever recorded for our show when we covered Promising Young Woman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So similar to our own history with this, we started our show in February of 2020. So this is actually the first show that we've done on a movie that came out during the course of our show.
Okay.
And that we actually discussed the following year during the Oscars campaign. So it's one of those where you discussed it in the moment it came out, and now we're covering it actually on the show.
Yeah. Means we've been doing this for a while.
Exactly. But otherwise, the last time we saw you guys was for our revisit of All the President's Men. What have you guys been up to since then?
Gosh, I don't even remember when that was. That was earlier this year, I think.
I think it was about a year ago.
I've lost all track of time is what I've done. You know, we've been plugging away at the podcast. We're pulling double duty with the Patreon now. So it's a lot of, figuring out what to do over there. What have we done this year?
Well, we've also been guesting on a lot of other shows.
We have. Yep.
We went on the Revisionist Almanac and covered 1976. Speaking of All the President's Men. So that was a difficult experience to not only talk about all of the fantastic movies from that year, but also try to include as many as you can in the conversation. It's just impossible, especially that year.
So, Tom, I don't know how you've done that as many times as you have.
No doubt.
I think last year alone, I think I got in 167 films for 5 episodes, but that was before I started law school, which nowadays there's absolutely no way.
Sure. I did just shy of 39 for that prep, and that was still
I did half of that.
A lot.
I want to say my personal record was like 52 or 53 for 2014. Like, the more modern the year is, usually the wider and more deep you can get for just film variety. So basically anything from the 90s on, it just gets more challenging.
It's also
which
just
is why,
acceptable.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to get.
yeah. And I think that the other part of it, I've actually enjoyed now covering some of the older years because you get a smaller subsection of the films, but they actually, depending on the year, you have an easier time of finding them either at a library or at like one of these free streaming services. Like, I want to say there's an archive or a classic film archive that you can occasionally find stuff at. But yeah, it just depends. So, we've already alluded to it a little bit here with Promising Young Woman. You guys say that you are very positive on the film. I remember Dad and I both being extremely positive on the film. When we did our first original Oscars kind of in the moment campaign, or I guess episode, we both had it as what we thought should win Best Picture that year over anything else, including Nomadland and The Sound of Metal and any of those other films. Why are you guys so high on it?
That's where I was too. I went all in on Promising Young Woman in the year of 2020 when, frankly, we're coming through a pandemic. There weren't a lot of movies that you could qualify as really great movies, but this was one I saw the trailer for and I was very interested. And then we watched it and it is done with such confidence. You would never believe this woman is making her first movie. This is a first-time director, a first-time writer, and it is insane. And I have watched it now. We just watched it this morning. So this was the third time I've seen it. And it hits just as hard as it did 5 years ago.
Yeah, and just talking about the Oscars that year, we both had it. So we do an Oscar special it comes out Oscar Sunday every single year where we talk about all of them, but we cover all of them individually on our show, every Best Picture nominee. And that year, I think you had Promising Young Woman at number 1 because we rank them every year too. You had it at number 1. I had it at number 2, if I'm remembering correctly. And the only reason it wasn't number 1 for me is because The Father affected me so much personally. That was just the performance in that movie just blew me away so much that I couldn't have it at number 1. I could not have it at number 1 because, just of the effect that it had on me. Now, I can totally understand somebody coming, Betsy's point of view. Hey, it's a woman on the show, everybody, talking about Promising Young Woman.
Yeah, if you guys didn't have a woman present for this, I was going to have some words.
Yeah. But the fact that, a movie like this is so unique, and we're going to talk about that for sure, but name me another movie like this where it is a horror movie. It is framed.
Is it Trent?
It is framed and scored
Trent?
as if it was a horror movie, but from a woman's perspective. And how can you describe that in any other way?
The visceral experience you have watching it if you're a man versus if you're a woman. This
100%.
is a very different movie
100%.
from two different perspectives. At least it can be, depending on who you are and how you watch it.
I think it definitely is played to be somewhat horror-esque, but I never really felt that, like the modern horror films that are very formulaic in the effects and elements that they use, I wouldn't say that this is of that ilk. But is this kind of like a throwback 70s style horror film with the musical score and kind of the camera angles and such? That I could see.
It's the musical cues and the shots here, especially when she gets put down on the bed in the very first encounter and she's literally looking at the camera and there is a musical sting there.
So, Dad, I remember specifically having this at number 1 and making the claim that, well, first off, from my memory, this was the last film of the Best Picture nominees that year that I watched. And it was the one that really profoundly, knocked me over.
Yes.
Which I think I remembered my specific statement was I had something else as my number 1 the entire time until I saw Promising Young Woman. And then it was like, oh my God, this is completely out of left field, but hits me in such the right way. And I specifically compared Emerald Fennell and this movie to the closest thing I can remember of actual Hitchcock, basically since Hitchcock. And I know that's quite a statement, given I know you haven't personally seen Saltburn yet. I remember seeing it in theaters. That is a very controversial movie that people either love or hate. It is definitely not anywhere in between for anybody. You love or hate that movie. It is incredibly polarizing, like Richard Nixon. But this movie, I think, has somehow drawn criticism after the fact because of people's feelings about Saltburn. And now that she's releasing this Wuthering Heights movie that also seems like it's going to strike a very controversial chord with certain people, I think that the tone and tenor of how we feel about her as a filmmaker has changed. But for me, coming back to this movie, there are very few things about it in watching the movie again that changed for me. So has anything changed for you?
No, I mean, I think the same thing. And every time, obviously I'm older than everybody else here. And
what?
But I going through the mid 80s and late 80s, the number of times I saw drunk women getting, basically just picked up in bars and taken home. Boy, this really kind of set me aback. The number of took me back to the days when a group of us used to go to a place called the Gyro Lounge in Janesville, Wisconsin, because the drinks were really cheap and there were a lot of women there. So, but boy, some of those, no, I don't even want to think about some of those situations that I'd see people in. But yeah, this struck a chord with me from that time frame that I was I was disgusted by a lot of it. And this only reinforced it. Watching it again did not do anything to change my opinion of the circumstances or what I remembered from that time frame.
So for me, because we spend so much time individually with every Best Picture nominee, talking about it, dissecting it, discussing it during the season, I very rarely revisit anything that we've gone over in that level of depth within a very short period of time. So I have not seen this movie again since the time that it came out and that we discussed it in the Oscars season. This is only my second viewing. The only two things that really changed for me is I remembered enough of the story that it kind of let me sit back and more observe the film instead of dealing with the plot. So I think I could take a little bit more of an objective look at her actions and her pain and all of the other things surrounding it. And then the ending just doesn't really work for me nearly the way that it does when it's surprising the first time.
Yeah. I had a physical reaction the first time because we saw this in the theater.
Well, no, not in the theater. We watched it at home. Okay. No, we weren't going to movies in 2020.
You're right. Excuse me. But I remember distinctly squirming physically in my seat during that final scene there, that final encounter. And I don't think another movie had really done that before, unless it was a horror type movie. But it's coming from such a strange and different kind of a mood and perspective that, again, you don't get outside of the horror genre.
So, Dad, I know that you said that nothing had really changed in your feelings, but did everything wash over you the same as you remembered it?
I think I was much more understanding of why she took the last steps. That I think with the outing of, why am I drawing a blank? Her boyfriend.
Ryan.
With Ryan. I think she realized that she was never going to be over this. That it was always going to come back and haunt her and destroy her. So at that point in time, this is her own version of suicide.
Yeah, we were talking about it after the movie is, okay, let's say this had gone differently. What would have happened after? Because if you achieve your goal, are you ever really going to be rid of this? Or are you just going to live with this forever? Because even if she had gone to that cabin and was successful, then what? then what?
Yeah,
She is
what is
so
success?
committed to this bit. She is so committed to this way of thinking and this life. Like, she has that line where she says, I have thought about it. Like, she has done nothing but think about this for years. What does success look like for her? Kind of a question.
Well, all right. Spoilers, and we'll just ruin the ending. So if you haven't seen the film, what the fuck are you doing watching this? Go back and listen or watch the movie and then come and watch this. But spoilers, 3, 2, 1. Does she actually go into that cabin thinking she's going to her death? I think there's at least a part of it, because you don't prepare a plan like that unless there's an element that says, I could die here. But then there's also a piece of me that wonders, did she put one of the handcuffs too loose so specifically he would end up killing her? Or was there an alternate plan?
Except that's explained, because when she put that handcuff on his left hand, he said, ouch. Oh, don't worry. You'll get used to it. And that's the hand that ended up getting freed.
But does that explain it? Like how
no,
he breaks
it doesn't
out of it?
explain it. But what it does do is it does not show. It shows that no, she did not intend to leave that loose so he would bust loose. I think she was going to keep pushing the envelope until there was violence and an explosion, and she was likely to die as a result of it.
Yeah, she was fully prepared for something to happen to her. She didn't necessarily know it was going to be she was going to die.
Yeah.
But she knew that something could happen to her if she had the forethought to write a note to this lawyer.
Sure.
Yeah.
I feel like every single encounter, every single thing that she had planned out here, besides, falling in love with Bo Burnham, I think everything, all of her actions go exactly how she expects them to go, except when she meets Alfred Molina. That is the one time she is surprised by anything that she is setting out to do. She went into this cabin expecting to be killed. 100% in my opinion.
Yeah, it's an ending that's certainly open to a certain level of interpretation. The one thing I will say to me is the effect of watching her die in such a way, and that it feels like it's sudden and completely unplanned, loses its effect when you know how the film actually ends. And that was the part to me that, like, that scene, it just loses a certain level of momentum because of that. Outside of it, I thought the rest of the film worked exactly the same way for me that it did 5 years ago. I have no complaints.
But it's that way with a lot of films that require a hidden or a surprise ending in order to be successful. You can't watch Psycho the second time and get the same reaction the first time you do.
Okay, I would take that. That's maybe not the best example to highlight. I think there's a lot to explore with Psycho that even when you know who the killer is still there. One of the ones that I think the ending and knowing the uniqueness of the ending that has kind of, it was great in the first time I saw it, and every time since it just kind of loses a little bit, for me, is The Prestige, which I know is sacrilege for some people, but I just remember distinctly that ending, and it just kind of like, all right, well, the magic trick is kind of gone here.
Yeah, there's certain movies. Earlier this year, we watched, was it this year, last year, we watched Matchstick Men. Yeah. And I told Trent, it's a movie with a twist. And once you know what's really going on, it's very, very difficult with that movie to watch it again and experience it in the same way, because all you're thinking about is the reveal at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I think a movie like that you can watch exactly twice and enjoy. The third time, it loses everything. Because the first time, you're fooled, or maybe you did figure it out, maybe you didn't. But the second time you watch it, you can see all the different clues that they're giving you. That's kind of any movie with a twist, though. Think about all the Shyamalan movies with a twist. We've been covering, I think we've done like 3 of them so far.
3 or 4.
3 or 4. I knew Sixth Sense. Of course I knew. Everybody knows that. But even going in for the first time, I was analyzing it from the perspective of, what if I didn't know the twist? Then you watch it again and you know everything. You know how it's set up and how it's revealed and everything. And in this movie, it's the same difference. The only thing I can say about this movie is that we are following Cassie the entire way. There is not one moment here where she is not on screen, and then all of a sudden she is literally put out of frame as the camera is kind of going up and she's underneath all these pillows. The camera is moving up so that she is completely out of frame and she's covered with the pillow. From that point on, she is no longer on the screen.
You don't see her face.
She's all of these men that we're following here and the results that she set up. It's jarring to the point where, oh, this person that we've been following this entire time, she's gone now.
So when you get text messages from her from the beyond, all of a sudden everybody goes, wait a second.
Right.
I guess I didn't pick up on the camera angle, but that makes a lot of sense. So is this the best revenge fantasy movie? Like, is this the peak?
For me, as a woman, yes. Because there's kind of not a lot of movies about this specific thing. Like, we've had revenge movies starring women like Kill Bill. But the motivation for why she's going after those people in Kill Bill is extremely different than the motivations of Cassie in this one. So I think there's an argument to be made. It certainly can be for specific people like me, but I don't know if I would go so far as to say across the board for any revenge movie ever, because I know this is an entire genre unto itself.
I think Kill Bill has a lot of elements in here. I also was struck by a movie that I watched for the 05 Rev Almanac here that I guess I didn't like, but I at least understood where it was coming from. And it's maybe because it's a genre or a territory of film that I'm not as familiar with. And that's Lady Vengeance, because it's Korean and they've just got a different style and aesthetic to what they're doing. But both of those really stuck out to me, that it seems more revenge fantasy movies in a modern sense tend to be from the perspective of women. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I was going to mention Kill Bill, or excuse me, not Kill Bill. We were just talked about that. No, I was going to talk about John Wick. John Wick is a revenge movie.
Yeah, you're right. Just looking up a very basic list of other ones, Django Unchained is listed there as a revenge movie. The Sting,
Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah,
sure.
I personally question whether this is a revenge film. I think that the person has to have some satisfaction in the revenge for it to be a revenge film. I think this is a tragedy.
Yes. Yeah. It's also vigilante justice. It's
yes.
more of a vigilante film than it is a revenge film, because she's kind of, she has the tragic backstory for her creation, kind of like Batman. If you think of it like Batman.
I was just going to say, you need to tell your Batman story.
She goes through a traumatic event. Even if it's not her, something around her is traumatic. It changes everything about the way she lives her life.
And she blames herself.
She blames herself for this happening, because she even says in the movie, I should have gone to that party with her. During the day, she lives this beautiful, pastel, pretty, soft existence. And then she transforms into another person at night to prove a point and to keep it from happening to other people.
I can't argue with the logic. It's pretty flawless.
Yeah, the fact that she sacrifices herself, I think, takes it out of the realm of a revenge film. And, I think that, the other revenge films, you already talked about so many of them, but even Ocean's 13 is technically a revenge film. And there's some satisfaction of that because it's more humorous, but you picture Al Pacino looking up and seeing his diamonds fly across the sky. That there's satisfaction. And what a revenge film does is not only does the character get the revenge, but the audience revels in the revenge. And there's no reveling in this film.
Gets it here because the guys get their comeuppance, but she does not get to enjoy it herself.
Okay, but I'm going to say again, are you sure there's no one reveling? Because as a woman, I'm going to tell you right now, I enjoy at the end of the movie seeing these guys get arrested at the wedding and something happens. And even she gets the little last laugh with her scheduled text messages. She says, did you really think this was over? From beyond, she has planned this to a T, to the fact that she knows when this is going to happen. So again, I find satisfaction in it. I revel in the fact that she does win to a point.
I think you can, because of where the movie ends. There is, and I hate to put it this way, but I think part of the movie alludes to, through its title, that a very famous example, which we'll get to in the Did You Know, where the justice system does not necessarily deliver the results that I think the audience expects nor wants. And these are all affluent, white people who tend to get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to criminal justice.
And they protect each other. The one thing here that we were kind of talking about after watching the movie together is the final scene where Al is being taken by the police and his presumably father is following them saying, I'm an attorney. You don't really
I'm a lawyer.
You don't really hear a whole lot about that. Thinking to myself, oh, he comes from a prominent, family that has money and success and prominence in the community, possibly. Where does this go from here? All of the evidence is here for not only the murder, but the tape is out there. I mean, you guys are lawyers. You tell us. What do you think is going to happen?
Okay, so first off, where do we think that this takes place? I think it's in California.
No, it's Ohio.
Is it Ohio?
She is driving a car with an Ohio license plate.
Okay. I missed that part. All right, so let's say it's Ohio, and I do have a little bit of background on Ohio criminal law because I'm taking law school in Cleveland. I don't think, based on the timeline of this movie, she's in her mid-20s when she drops out of med school, I believe.
Yes.
And then she is 30 when this movie takes place, so there's like a 5-year gap. I don't think it runs the statute of limitations. So they would look at potential criminal charges on the rape portion of things, which is why I think she strategically sent it, the tape or the cell phone, to the other attorney who feels responsible for stuff, because I think he's going to have a personal stake in trying to at least absolve himself of that particular crime.
Yeah.
You can
Now, because they never pressed charges and they weren't acquitted, you can still go after that. The murder charge is going to have some additional things, but you have disposing of evidence. You have obstruction of justice. I was trying to find the right word. Obstruction of justice with them burning the body. How many people knew? You're going to potentially have lying if that becomes a thing. So I think there's a large smorgasbord of stuff. The question is going to be who turns on whom to try and get the larger charges. So like I can see Dr. Ryan specifically saying, yes, I was a part of this. Yes, I witnessed this, and trying to get himself out of some of the stuff because that's how you roll up on the conspiracy list.
I also pointed out to Trent, though, he could probably he could also be considered obstructing justice because he knew she was going there.
Yeah.
He could have put a stop to it before it even happened. Like
That's fair.
If she had a plan to assault this man, to kill this man, we don't exactly know. We know she was going to at least attack him.
Accessory to attempted murder.
Yeah,
he knew
something.
what she was going to do, or at least possibly do.
He knew she was going, and he had an opportunity to tell the cops and didn't.
All right. From the trial attorney
Let's
here.
hear it. Yes, we've been waiting
please.
for this.
From a former criminal defense attorney. Okay. Number one. Okay. Ryan's legal culpability is minimal. Malfeasance is one thing. Non-feasance is something different. Your failure to act is not necessarily punishable. Okay. But he will have his career severely tainted, and his name would be drugged through the ringer. What will likely happen is Ohio is a death penalty state, and there's going to be an argument as to whether this was murder one, premeditated, or whether this is murder two, emotional distraught. My guess is that there will be some sort of severe plea negotiations. There'll be a plea down to a homicide second degree, maybe even third degree, with reading in the sexual assault for the purposes of sentencing. And that's likely what's going to end up happening on this because there's just too much. Now, you're also going to get his buddy who tries to ditch out, who's going to get nailed for concealing and abuse of a corpse. And so he is going to be spending 3 to 5 years in prison as well. Not to mention that charge will probably also be added to the underlying homicide charge.
I would say he's likely not going to be manslaughter, but he could make at least a case that, because it's not premeditated and it's going to be in the moment, that it was a self-defense. So then you might be looking at felony murder, I believe, does exist in Ohio.
Yes, but self-defense only goes to the extent that action is needed to stop the potential harm. The minute he frees himself and is able to push her away, the fact that he continues to smother her with the pillows takes it beyond self-defense. There's going to be an argument that will be made by his defense counsel that this is self-defense, but that is going to go away very quickly. And it's ultimately, because what's going to end up happening is they're not going to be able to do a good autopsy because obviously the body's burned. Because if they were able to do it, and this is where they're somewhat have an advantage, because the autopsy would have showed the level or the amount of time it took for her to be smothered, would have shown that it took several minutes, which would have added to that overall situation. But the fact that they disposed of the body and burned it will be evidence that they knowingly exceeded what was self-defense.
Okay, so the last point truly sits for me, but I think if you're a talented defense attorney, you'd also argue that her obsession with getting certain levels of revenge, and so then you'd start going through Madison, and you'd start going through Ryan, and all of the other people, Dean, what's her name, all of the individual people would testify, and you would say the only way to stop her in this moment while she has a scalpel, even though the scalpel's away because he's still got one hand restricted, is to kill her.
Okay, I understand. Remember, there are three things that exist. Okay, there is what the state says happened.
Right.
Well, actually, there's more than that. There's what the state says happened. There's what the witnesses say happened. There's what really happened. And there's what the state can prove happened.
And there's what the jury believes.
Okay. Well, the proof is that what the state can prove is ultimately what the jury believes. So of course, there's four different things.
Everything you're talking about just brings it right back to the whole problem with the start of this movie. The thing that happened at the beginning of the movie before the movie begins.
Yeah.
This girl was at a party and she was drunk. And this is the arguments that happen. It's a whole lot of people saying, what can you prove? Yeah. Even though we find out later there's a video, everybody at that party shared this video. Somebody could have done something to say, this is the right thing to do. This is the way to be honest. This is the way to clear this up. I don't care if it hurts our friend. It's all about the systemic problem that existed at this college, because the dean even says, well, we get all of these things like once a week this happens. And Madison says, this happened all the time when we were in college, expressing that this was not a good place to be. The college had systemic problems that allowed this to happen. And then even though you're in a community, the thing I wrote down was that the community is supposed to protect you. The community that you're a part of is supposed to protect you. And in this case, it didn't, except if you're one of the guys. If you are in the gang, if you're one of the guys, even if you're Madison, she's one of the guys too.
She married into it. They protect the gang. If you're one of the guys, you're protected. And if you're not, they will just throw you under the bus. And even going into the scenario, actually in court, if we were to extrapolate all this, if they go into court, they're going to protect their own, even though they know that Al was the one who did the deed and whatnot, and the other guy helped him out. They're going to do whatever they can to help each other. Even when they find her body and his friend Joe immediately says, dude, this wasn't your fault. Immediately. Yeah. It was an accident, right? It was an accident. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I certainly have no argument against anything that you said. And this falls into the category again. And you made the point that if we didn't have somebody from the female perspective to argue multiple sides in this, that we'd be lost. Because in no way have I ever claimed to be a woman, nor will I expect to ever be a woman. And I think there is something missing from my own perspective of college and these things that I assume when I walk into a party of people that look like me, that I will be fine at any moment or juncture. And I guess my understanding from listening or hearing a lot more perspectives, particularly in the last 10 years, 5 years, whatever, is that's not the case, particularly for women.
Yeah, I was telling Trent, I can name 6 people off the top of my head in my immediate friend group that something has happened to at varying degrees. And they got this game played on them too. Well, that couldn't have happened to you. No, what guy would do that? Because you're ugly. Like literally that was the reason that was given. It's like,
yeah,
awesome. Love that.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things in this. One is yes, I'm very aware of that. The fact is that, I mean, there's a reason why there's a type of bar glass being made now that actually will turn color if alternate substances are put into a drink.
There's fingernail polish you can get to dip your finger in, and if it changes color.
Yeah. Okay, this is what's going on. I understand all this. So that part of it, I perfectly understand. I also understand one thing, which is no matter what we say or do, there is always going to be a problem with certain socioeconomic people getting away with things because of their socioeconomic circumstances. And we can point to certain people within, higher levels of government who seem to be Teflon, no matter what happens or what they're accused of or do, and get away with it. And in part because people just don't want to believe it because, there's an advantage to it. And judges, whether they like to say it or not, are influenced by people who have more respect within the community or come from certain families versus others. I've been in hearings or pretrial conferences in chambers where a judge will say, your client's going to not get custody of that kids. I know his parents. I know that kid's parents. There's no way in hell I'm going to put kids in that family without even having one iota of evidence presented in court. I can tell you the circumstances. I can tell you which judge said it. And this is the kind of stuff that goes on. Unfortunately, the best you can do is try to survive and do the best you can. The third point I would like to make, every guy would love to be able to say that if I would have been Ryan and walked in and saw this going on, I would have walked over and grabbed Al and said, knock it off. But I don't know. Do you in those circumstances? Do you get worried about what the reaction is going to be to other people? And by doing that and the peer pressure, is that really make you any better? And I don't know the answer to that. I would love to say that I would have done that, but I don't know.
Yeah, this movie should make everyone do a lot of self-reflection, and it's all about self-accountability and accountability for other people in your group. Like, you can't always stop someone from doing something bad, but if you know they did something bad, you yourself can hold yourself accountable and do something about it. And that's the path that Cassie takes, is she tries to defend her friend, and literally no one else does. The thing that was infuriating me watching this today was the number of people that were like, oh, it was such a long time ago. It was like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Come on. The events that you're talking about are the same distance ago that this movie came out. I remember 5 years ago. You remember. You just don't want to remember. Oh, we were kids. Everyone's got an excuse for why they couldn't hold themselves accountable. It's like, sweetie, you already graduated from a college and now you're in like a prestigious like medical program and you're just a kid. Ridiculous. That's a ridiculous thing to say.
Everybody else is saying, oh yeah, it was so long ago, I don't even remember. As soon as Al is confronted on that bed, he remembers very, very quickly.
The problem is that people have an ability to compartmentalize things in their lives.
Yeah. Well, that's the exact comment with, I'm a nice guy. Like, for me personally, I'd like to think that I'm a nice guy, but there are elements or times when I have not been a good guy. It doesn't cover over all of these things where you convince yourself of one identity or the other. And so, yes, as part of this, I start to think back in my memory, are there things that I've just blocked out or simply don't remember that I didn't pick up on certain signs or things that happened during that time.
Could you have done it differently, whatever that thing is?
So, Dad, having said all of that, do you have our plot summary ready for us?
I do. Promising Young Woman is a darkly clever thriller written and directed by Emerald Fennell. The film stars Carey Mulligan as Cassie Thomas, a woman whose life was derailed after a tragedy involving her best friend Nina. By day, Cassie works in a coffee shop and seems aimless. But at night, she secretly confronts men who try to take advantage of women who appear drunk, forcing them to face their actions. When Cassie reconnects with an old classmate, Ryan, Burnham, she begins to hope for a normal life again. However, as she seeks justice for Nina, Cassie's plan takes a shocking and emotional turn.
Okay, we have been through a lot of different themes, discussed the plot. What is the film actually about?
Ladies first.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I guess that's a better question. Like, how do you view the film? Because as I said, I think I view the film differently.
I think 5 years ago, I would have said something differently. There is a part of me that views the film very much through an obsession. I take a couple of different perspectives because, especially going through law school now, I can't completely take my head off for how I see all of the elements, especially of the rape case, because that's centrally what kicks off everything else, is that nobody else seemed to want to help. And I think there is an indifference among the elements and all the other people and witnesses around the time of the original inciting incident that you could say didn't assist. But until the video comes out, you could also then make a plausible case that there just wasn't enough to establish a true credible case. And at that point, what she's doing is self-gratification and attempting to deal with her own grief and guilt through in a very obsessive manner. And yes, in a very compelling and entertaining way for the course of a film. But I don't know how it really helps her absolve the sins or anything else. I think there's a lot tied up into her final speech before she tries to, I guess, kill or write on Al, and before she's eventually killed. I think there's a lot to be said about the video coming to light, and then, because I had forgotten there was a video. That was one element that I definitely forgot about. I remembered the ending very distinctly, but I forgot that there was a video that kind of turned the movie around a little bit. So for me, there's the elements where I understand her perspective and wanting to get this avenge emotion and all of the darkness and everything else that's there, especially because she viewed this person as probably the person she loved most in the world. And who wouldn't want that if you felt that there was something you could do, or somebody that you loved very distinctly was wronged, and you had the ability to do something, that you wouldn't want to at least do this? So, like, I'm rooting for Cassie through most of the film, but I also find her to be very self-destructive. And that's me being able to take a step back and do more of an objective look, as opposed to getting really involved in her story, where I was much more heavily rooting for her character the first time through. I think it also lends itself to the fact that I know what the ending was, that she was going to die. So I can't get as invested in her being successful in this, because I ultimately know, yes, she is successful to a degree. And so then you can take the step back and say, was it all worth it for her? And that's maybe where I landed this second time around.
Without going into the mental health of it all, obviously she is going through it and has been going through it for a very long time and hasn't been getting any kind of help outside of going to work and living with her parents. And clearly they're kind of sick of it by, giving her the not so subtle push out the door with the suitcase gift on her 30th birthday. But I would say, I lost my train of thought. Her not really dealing with the issue. I don't think she wants to. I think her best friend was taken from her, not only because she is now deceased, but she said at the end there, suddenly she was something else when she's confronting Al. She was no longer the person that she used to be. Even if she did not die, she was never going to be the same person. And she was never going to have the same relationship with her best friend. So whatever the relationship was there, it will not be there anymore. So from that point on, I think she ceased to want to live, but she didn't do anything about it other than do all of this other stuff that she was doing at night. And that's her way of coping, I guess. It's not that she wants to punish the men. I don't think she's out there trying to punish them. I think she is out there spreading awareness, if I can use that word, spreading awareness of this is what you guys are doing. And if you continue to do this, you know, maybe you might find yourself in this other position. We didn't really see the entirety of it except when we are with McLovin, but you can kind of tell why she's doing it and what she's doing in these incidents. And obviously none of the men are ever going to talk about it. They're not going to be honest anyway.
Just a small note of casting, to cast one of the like teen obsessions, let's say, for my generation from Superbad, and then Adam Brody with the AC as OC, not AC, being the first two victims in this, and then Max Greenfield the people that are in this are very strategic for my generation of the people from all of our pop culture that you would be like, yeah, I could see this guy in this moment.
Yeah.
The Hollywood known nice guys. They are known nice guys.
Of that age, yeah.
Of that age. And even they in this movie do the bad thing when given an opportunity.
The Max Greenfield guy, I've always said, is like the broiest bro guy that I've ever seen in anything. If you've seen him in anything, he's usually playing this kind of a role. But I'm sure in reality, he's a perfectly nice guy. But I can't look at him and not think that, oh yeah, you're just the broiest douchebag I've ever seen.
Throughout this entire film, okay, it is obvious that Carey Mulligan has a suicidal wish. Her behavior, even going into the bars and pretending to be drunk and going home, you have no idea at that point in time where these guys are taking you and what they're going to do. She's putting herself at risk because ultimately she's willing to do this and keep doing this until eventually somehow somebody puts her out of her pain.
You can see in her face that she is the most confident. She has no fear of any of these men doing anything to her, because what could be done to her that hasn't already been done to her best friend?
Correct. And so this is a death wish. She has extreme behavior that would potentially be extremely dangerous, if not potentially harmful or fatal. And she just keeps upping the ante until finally she's put out of her pain. But the film itself, boy, I think what it does is it shows that there is the potential that even if you can compartmentalize this type of behavior, that it ultimately may come back out. It may ultimately eat you alive. And so you just can't do it. And you should understand that before you get into it. You might get away with it for 5 years, but somehow or another, it may very well come out and get you. And the concept of we were so young. They were in med school. They were in their mid-20s.
You are adults at that point.
You're an adult. I mean, what? You get out of things because you're upper middle class and in a professional setting then you doesn't count until you're 30.
I pointed this out after the lunch meeting with the Allison Brie character, where she goes in there and they're sitting down. She's like, oh my God, I haven't seen you forever. She reverts back to what they were to each other back when they were in college. But then when she confronts her on her front door, she is an adult. She is actually playing her age at that point, saying, okay, yes, I know there were so many things that were happening back then, but you understand that this is blah, blah, blah. And she didn't have to present this video or this cell phone or whatever. She didn't have to. But at that moment, she was like kicked out of whatever it was that she was mentally, when she questioned whether or not she did anything with that man in the hotel room.
It's her mea culpa. It's her, I'm going to give you this because I need to purge myself of the guilt I've held and tried to hide forever, or for the last 5 years. And so I'm going to give you this video so that you understand. And then now I'm done. I've come clean. Don't contact me again.
Yeah, she doesn't apologize. That's the closest thing she's going to get to an apology from that woman. But yeah, I've kind of touched on the different points already, but clearly I don't know if something like this ever happened to Emerald Fennell personally. But I guarantee it happened to someone she knows, because it has happened to people I know. And this is sort of, it is what you said. It's creating awareness. Like, you all should watch this movie and think about, has that happened to me? Has that happened to someone I know? What could I do to acknowledge that, there is a problem that we are all pretending doesn't exist? Because that's why the Me Too movement started, was there was this problem that everybody knew about and no one was doing anything about. All they have to do is open their mouths as a group, because everyone in the group knows what happened.
And Dana, even you said this harkens back to a time in your own life when you were seeing it happen. At no time would I ever blame you for not intervening or anything like that. But I think it is having an awareness that this is happening and it is a problem, and it just needs to be a lot more just in the front of your mind.
Did you know the very first scene writer Emerald Fennell thought of was a female character lying on a bed while someone takes her pants down as she is drunkenly asking, "What are you doing?" then asking the same question in a completely sober manner. She wrote the rest of the film based on this idea. Did you know the title is likely a reference to Brock Turner, a Stanford University student who was convicted of sexual assault in 2016. The judge sentenced him to only 6 months in prison on the basis that he was, quote, a promising young man. Did you know? A few months before the film debuted at Sundance, writer-director Emerald Fennell and her producers set up a test screening to gauge the reactions of a wide audience. During one of the scenes, a fight started between two audience members. One person was very angry about the scene, and the other person was telling them to leave if they didn't like it. She told IndieWire about the incident. It was quite visceral, and that was quite shocking because obviously I wanted to make a film that was thought-provoking and that made people talk about it, but I wasn't expecting that.
Wow.
Yeah, I had not heard that story.
No.
I think this entire movie is made to be polarizing. I don't think she pulls any punches, and basically, even though her other two movies to this point that I'm making a little bit of a precursor on what Wuthering Heights will be, but I've seen the original movie and I know enough about the subject material to understand that only to a degree can it be anywhere near what this is. This is a culturally hot button film by its subject matter, whereas the other ones, they have their elements, but they're not quite with their finger on the pulse of something that is so controversial. But that being said, I don't think any of her films is made to be anything less than polarizing. And I think she revels in people not knowing how to take her films.
I think that's exactly the point. She's just like, this is what I'm saying, like it or don't. Because we haven't seen Saltburn, but that is something that we've talked about doing, is covering a movie like that, because it's so like 50-50. Just all of those movies that we know are right down the middle, where Babylon. People love Babylon. People loathe Babylon. People love Saltburn. People hate Saltburn. And, there's something in common there, because Margot Robbie is also one of the producers of Promising Young Woman, and she's involved with Emerald Fennell's production company and getting all those movies off the ground. She's obviously the star of Wuthering Heights. The theory there is, because the title is in quotations, that it's a movie within the movie, basically, where she's reading Wuthering Heights, because people who know about the historical inaccuracies on the surface are like, that is not at all what this should look like for when Wuthering Heights takes place. So she is somebody who is very creative. But you're right. This is the first one that she came out the door with, and the only one to date where she is talking about a culturally relevant topic. The rest of them, it's just, this is a movie I feel like making, and like it or don't.
Saltburn is very much like that. It has a lot of twists and turns. I will say some of them you could see coming. Some of them I definitely didn't. But the two movies you mentioned, Babylon and Saltburn, I had a very good time in the theater watching. So take your chances. I don't think they're for everybody. They are very much from a point of view. And I think if there's one thing that I can give feedback from the podcast or the Cinepodcaster community, we like when people take chances, even if they don't always land with us. I think we focus on the negativity that just because a film doesn't work, that somehow we shouldn't make more of those.
Yeah, and the thing you said at the beginning about people revisiting Promising Young Woman now and having criticisms about it, I haven't personally heard that, but I feel like, yeah, why are you applying the stuff you thought about Saltburn to this movie? Because I don't know, this one, I don't see it, but
I don't think that any of them are made to be controversial. I think she's an artist like any other filmmaker, and if you don't like it, okay, it's art. It's very subjective. I happen to really, really like Promising Young Woman because you are taking the topic that everybody, there was a feeling in the culture that was bubbling under the surface before the Me Too movement really got off the ground. And this, I don't think it was like a catalyst for anything to happen, but it was something to point to as, look at this movie. This is what the women are talking about. This is what they think about us. And I don't know, but I think that us talking about the controversies of film, it's a topic for podcasters like us, like you said, but I don't care. I really don't care. If you think that she's doing stuff to be controversial, great. I don't care. If I don't like it, I won't watch it again. Not every movie has to be for everybody, and that's why I like what we do.
Well said. I will say, if you like this movie, I have a feeling you will also like Saltburn. It just may not be to the level that you like this movie, because that's my experience with it. Did you know? With this film, Emerald Fennell is the first woman to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Director for a debut film. She received an Oscar nomination for Best Director along with Chloe Zhao for Nomadland, marking the first time two women have been nominated in the category in the same year. They were also the 6th and 7th female directors to be nominated. Did you know? There are multiple shots where Cassie is seated in front of her headboard with the white frame jutting out behind her, symbolically forming angel wings. There's also a scene where she's sitting on and then later in front of the couch, where the couch jutting out behind her once again forms angel wings. There's also a scene in the coffee shop where she is framed by a blue halo.
Yeah, I've noticed the blue halo, but not the other ones. I didn't think of it that literally.
I thought of it as, because that's also the scene where Bo Burnham comes to the coffee shop and they kiss for the first time. It's as if there's a bubble there over her and she is letting him into her bubble.
Oh, I guess I hadn't considered that one. The one that I guess, the blue halo one reminds me of a lot of artwork of similar looking women, especially I think the poster for Lady Vengeance is very much framed the same way. So I think that might have been influential, but I don't know.
It looks like a Renaissance painting, the way she's standing there, like wiping out a coffee cup.
Yeah. Did you know Emerald Fennell deliberately chose Paris Hilton's Stars Are Blind for the pharmacy dance scene? In an interview, she said she wanted a song, quote, that if the guy knew the lyrics to it, you would immediately fall in love with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are certain bad songs that are from the mid-2000s that nobody should ever know the lyrics to, but they're definitely ones where it's cringy, but with like a fond affection for.
It's endearing.
Yeah, like the Barbie song. That's up there. But that looks like a good spot for our first break. We will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next year for our 295th episode, we welcome back Mike Emmel of Cinemas to discuss Sabotage from 1936, celebrating its 90th anniversary, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, written by Charles Burnett, cinematography by Bernard Knowles, music by Jack Beaver, starring Sylvia Sidney, Oscar Homolka, and John Loder. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Dad, have you actually seen Sabotage before?
Yes, and I can tell you exactly where I saw it. Blake College, my sophomore year of college, on Friday nights in the big auditorium where they held most of the science lectures, they would show films. And that was one of the early Hitchcock films that I saw, was watching it there. They showed it. And the next week they showed a film that you absolutely despise, Being There, with Peter Sellers.
I've never seen it.
You watched about 15 minutes and said, I hate this because I can't watch Peter Sellers, and refused to watch any more of it.
Yeah, okay.
He played Chauncey the gardener.
The types of movies they played at Beloit College when I went there is a little different, because I think I just watched things like Bend It Like Beckham. It was great fun.
Yeah, this is one I haven't seen yet, so part of the reason that it's included on the list here to try and cover. I have not seen a lot of Hitchcock's earliest work, and nor have I seen really any of his silent films. We have not covered the 39 Steps yet. We did cover the Lady Vanishes, which I was very surprised how much I enjoyed that, because to this point, I wasn't enamored with the 39 Steps. I certainly wasn't enamored with the original Man Who Knew Too Much. So,
although Peter Lorre was pretty creepy.
Well, of course. But
39 Steps is a fun play.
So I'm very hopeful for this one, but I'm hoping that it leaves me with a little bit more Lady Vanishes than some of the other films. But we'll see. We will see. Before we get any further, let's check in with our guests, Betsy and Trent. What are you guys working on, and where can people find you?
Well, because it's the end of the year, I don't remember the exact day this episode comes out. We either just...
So this will be Christmas Eve.
Okay. So I think we're just about to put out our year-end awards show.
Yeah.
We go back and look at every single movie that we watched that was new to us. It was something we started on a whim because we both had a cold and we're not feeling up to doing a whole movie.
Yeah.
And so we were like, what if we do like an awards show? And we just threw it together in about 45 minutes in our first year. And we've done it every year since. And it's really fun. We just come up with some silly categories to award the movies that we experienced for the very first time this year.
This will be the 5th annual Never Seen It Awards, where it has just grown every single year. We add categories, we subtract categories based on the year of the movies that we watched. One year we had a category, most A24 movie, because we watched like 6 A24 movies.
Accidentally. We didn't plan it.
It wasn't planned. It was just for that year. But yeah, we come up with some fun categories, and it's just a summation of the entire year that was us. And yeah. But for the last couple of months of the year, because our podcast is not really focusing on brand new movies, we've only covered one 2025 movie so far this year, and that was Sinners. That was for our Decade series, and we had to do it for that one. But we're doing a lot of catch up. So by this time, we would have already put out what? One Battle After Another, Tron Ares, the new I don't know, Begonia.
We're trying to get a lot of those Oscar precursor type of things in too. But being in South Dakota, you get them when you get them. So we probably won't get to see a lot of those till the beginning of next year. But that's kind of the forecast for the beginning of 2026 is waiting for the Oscars to come out for the nominations and seeing what's going to be on the watch list to go.
Yeah, and I would hope by this time in the year when this comes out, and for full disclosure, we're recording this in October. So when we're talking so far in advance, it's because we don't exactly know what the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks are going to necessarily hold for all of us. But yeah, the Oscar favorites, I would guess most of them, if not a significant majority, because there's always a straggler or two that comes out in like January or something, but most of them will be released about this point if they haven't been already. And so I know several of them are going to be coming up from where we're recording this in real time in the next few weeks, that my dad's actually going to be able to join me next weekend for hopefully a few different films when he's actually down here, where there are movies available that aren't lowest common denominator films like he gets up in his area. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm ready yet for award season, but it doesn't really slow down for me.
It never stops. It's always coming. It's way too early for where we are recording it, but by the time this comes out, we're already going to be behind probably. Yeah. Last year, I think the last movie we watched the day before the episode was supposed to come out, because that was as soon as we could get it, because I'm Still Here was not playing in South Dakota.
Yeah.
And then it was a week before the Oscars. So it was as down to the wire as we sometimes get.
And we had to see it at our local art house theater that a whole lot of people just aren't lucky enough to have.
Right. I remember for that specific movie, we were in Minneapolis. So I looked up because we were there over the weekend. I'm like, I wonder if this is playing here. And so we went to some random theater like 5 minutes away from my sister's apartment that we were at and watched it there, because otherwise I had no idea. For me in Madison, where there's a lot of liberals, like that stuff comes a lot and comes around very often. But for him, you never know. It may wait until it's on VOD, and that's your only option.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When we watched that other one that was your top one, Women Talking.
Oh,
it came out on Amazon streaming like Wednesday, the Wednesday before the Oscars. And that was back when we were doing 2 episodes a week on the main show, where we recorded it Wednesday night. I think I edited it that night or maybe the next day.
I think you did it that night.
I think I might have did it that night.
And put it out the next day.
And I put it out the next day, a day late, because normally it would have come out on Wednesday. But yeah, that was the one that was the hottest coming in.
Which is why now we try to be as proactive as we can. If it's playing, we go now. We saw One Battle After Another a month ago just to release it a month later, because we don't know how long it'll stay in the theater where we live.
Right.
No, of course. I 100% get that. Women Talking was one of those where I saw it way in advance of everybody else, but that's because the University of Wisconsin puts on this like film series on campus, and they've showed that movie, and I saw that in like November the prior year, and they put out Zone of Interest early that I went to in advance. I know they did something last year, and I can't remember what they did, and this year, I think it was last Thursday, they had, what's the Iranian film that won Cannes? I can't remember the name now.
Just an Accident? Is that
yes, It's Just an Accident. That one was at the theater there, but I had class that night, so I had to miss it, because otherwise that would have been another one. I'm like, you never know when it's going to come back.
It's not like we can't watch this one, but the local theater just announced they're going to be showing Frankenstein, the new Guillermo del Toro version. And I would love to see it on the big screen as opposed to watching it at home on Netflix, because I like to support that theater, and it would just be a cool movie to see.
Yeah.
And it's not playing on a day I can go. It's like, of course it's not, because there's only 2 showings and they're 4 days apart, and there's something going on both those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know my biggest problem is there's a theater that does show some of these films, but what they tend to do is, and I can't remember which film it was I was looking, and it's something I wanted to see that's going to possibly be nominated. It starts at 8:10 on Saturday night and is a 3-hour movie. And I'm like, and it's an hour away. And I'm like, no way, I can't do that. I'm starting to pass out for the night by 10:30, and there's no way in hell I'm going to do that and then drive home.
Yeah.
If you make it through the whole movie without falling asleep.
Yeah.
That's what I would probably do.
And that's the thing that we have to consider as well, because we record our episode immediately after watching a movie. So if we have a drive in there as well, I might as well just take all of this equipment I have below me and take it with us.
Do it in the car.
Yeah.
I remember there was one, I think it was either last year or it was the year before, and the only way you were going to see it, and I had already seen it, was that you had to go to the theater at like 10:23 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the Oscars was that following Sunday. And you're like, I can't do that. I have appointments.
Yeah. It was the Adrian Brody film.
Oh yeah. The Brutalist. It thankfully came out on VOD like right around that point. So
yeah, I finished
you were
it
able
like,
to catch it.
Yeah, I watched it on VOD, but otherwise, yeah. Like, really? I mean, who's going to be going to a 3-hour film like that on a Tuesday afternoon?
But this is our season finale, so that means it is time for the last CLP rankings drop. Last week, we left you at numbers 3 through 5. Before that, we gave you numbers 10 through 6. So just giving a quick recap on the list to this point. At number 10, we had Pulp Fiction, 9, Schindler's List, 8, 12 Angry Men, 7, Psycho, 6, Singing in the Rain, 5, The Shawshank Redemption, 4, The Wizard of Oz, 3, Casablanca, and we will reveal the top 2 here in a second. But I wanted to gauge, have any of you not seen any of those movies?
Hi.
Okay, which one?
There were 2 by my count.
12 Angry Men and Singing in the Rain.
I have disclosed on multiple occasions, but 12 Angry Men was my personal number 1 on my list.
Schindler's was mine.
And I think there's good arguments for both of those. So I would personally recommend, because I think you have somewhat similar taste to myself.
I love a good talkie.
12 Angry Men. 12 Angry Men is so your movie.
I know.
It's a play. You will love 12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
And it's done better than the play version.
Yeah.
That's
it's also
like,
Sidney Lumet.
Yeah.
Which you already love him. So
I do.
I think I watched 12. So I was recently on a pod when we're recording this for somebody else. I was guesting on it. I think I watched it 4 times. Like, I'm not one of those people that does prep more than 1 time. I'm just like, do I want to watch it again? Yeah, of course I do. So yeah, easily rewatchable. But all right. So our top 2 here, these are going to be no surprises for anyone. At number 2, we have Jaws.
Yep.
Possibly the greatest film by the greatest film director ever.
Yeah. At the time of this release, I think you watched that in May.
Yep. We did it for Big Movie May.
For the first time.
No.
Wow.
We did it for our Decades series.
May, June, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Okay. Dad, any thoughts on Jaws at 2?
Just, again, sometimes series of happy accidents make an all-time classic. Not to mention some outstanding performances. I will always remember Robert Shaw in the monologue on the boat. And so, yeah, nothing more needs to be said.
Jaws is so intimately tied to the history of this show because I had not experienced it before we did this program. We did it in our first season. We revisited it. It was actually our second revisit episode. I think that was one of our great early episodes, if I can ever point anybody back to it. I know I've gotten compliments from people back when we were doing the early version of the podcast on my accent work for doing Robert Shaw, doing the Indianapolis speech. So there's just so many things tied to it. And it is, again, as of this season, the number 1 film on our greatest movies of all time list.
So no
there's
surprise.
Yeah, there's only maybe minimal surprise that it's at 2 and not at 1. But yes, I don't think there's going to be too much disagreement with this appearing roughly where it does. So that begs the question, what is number 1? And to no one's surprise at all, a film that has often ranked near the top in most of these best, greatest, whatever lists, Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather.
I knew it.
I had a feeling.
Uh-huh.
So
It's another one I haven't seen.
Yeah, raise your hand if you haven't seen it.
Yep.
It's this guy.
This guy.
And this is the exact exercise a couple of years ago where I recognized I don't want to shame you. I think too many people in the film community gatekeep. How have you not seen that movie? And frankly, as movie podcasters, anytime you disclose that to anybody, they think you've seen every film that's ever existed in the history of mankind. So all I will say is I wish you fantastic luck and hope you really enjoy it as much as we do, because I think it is one of the great first movie experiences that you could ever have, personally. But I don't want to build it up any more than that because...
Oh, it's already completely built up.
Well, listen, I'll put a little asterisk next to it. I've seen The Godfather once, which is why it did not feature on my list. And at the time I watched it, I didn't really like The Godfather. That's kind of my major controversial movie opinion when bringing it up with people who praise The Godfather.
That is Blade Runner for you.
But I also haven't watched it in 20 years, and my taste in film has seriously changed. So I know that eventually we are going to watch it. We are going to do it for our podcast. And maybe I'll feel differently, because not so many people would constantly say it's the greatest movie of all time if there wasn't something to it. So I'm always open to try it again.
To be fair, my dad has had his criticisms with The Godfather. He doesn't necessarily think it's the number one film. I know it was on his list, but I think that's because I've badgered him so much into having some of that.
No, I understand the quality of the film. And I think to some extent, and Trent, when you go into it, don't go into it with the idea that this is supposedly the greatest. Go into it and saying this is going to be the most overrated film known to man, and then watch it, because I think then you will have a better appreciation of it. I think it gets so overblown for people who have not seen it that they get underwhelmed and they don't really look at it fresh, like what this film is.
To switch the genre, we covered for our October series of movies that we call Never Scream It. We covered The Exorcist a couple of years ago, a movie that everybody seems to put at the top of their list. I didn't like it. I did not like it at all. It was boring. It was disappointing.
You didn't think it was scary?
I didn't think it was scary. And it's not just because, hey, I'm a 41-year-old man now, but I objectively looking at that movie, the way we look at every single movie under the sun, I didn't care for it. So same thing about The Godfather. I have seen enough of The Simpsons to have basically seen the entirety of all of the parodies that they've done and just people talking about it. I need to see it in its entirety in order to really judge it.
And you can't see something again for the first time. So I always take the tact of congratulating people that you can never rewatch something for the first time. You still hold the opportunity to watch it for the first time.
Yeah.
We hear that from a lot of people, especially given the kind of show that we do, is, oh, I envy the experience. We just watched The Thing for the first time a few weeks ago, specifically at the request of our local friend who was showing it for his birthday party on the big screen at this local theater we were referencing. Mm-hmm. And he said, please, I'm begging you, let this be the first time you see The Thing. Yeah. And he got a digital scan of a 35 millimeter print with an updated surround sound track.
Yeah, it came with a 5.1 track, but the film itself was a new scan of a 35 millimeter print with dust and dirt and everything. Pops. There was frames missing. You could see it jump a couple of times. And they put a disclaimer at the beginning of the thing saying, I know this is going to look like shit, but this is as close to the original thing that you could have gotten in 1982.
And yeah, that was really his wish, was I want you to experience it this specific way. And we loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah, both of us just enjoy the hell out of it.
I mean, that's number 65, tied with Akiru on the CLP. So certainly not a bad film to experience for the first time. It has its celebrators and its lovers. And we just covered this in real time in the recorded verse a couple of months ago, I guess, in when you'll probably be listening to this for the Revisionist Almanac of 1982, when that came out in October. So we recognize that film here. Again, I'm a bit of a wuss, so I didn't include a ton of horror on mine, but I understand why people enjoy it as much as it does, because it leaves so many things to the imagination, particularly in the ending. All right, so a couple of other facts now that we have all of the movies disclosed to everyone. But do you have an idea or have any guesses as to what the director breakdown is?
Oh, gosh. I would think Spielberg's going to be on there at least 8 times.
Okay, he got 6. He is number 1 with 6. Jaws, Schindler's List, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jurassic Park, Saving Private Ryan, and E.T.
Okay, that would be the bunch if I was going to really pick some.
And then number 2 is Kurosawa with 5. Seven Samurai, Ikiru, Rashomon, Ron, and High and Low.
Scorsese?
Scorsese would have been my next guess.
Okay, Scorsese comes in with 3, but he's a little bit further down he's tied with Coppola and Lumet. He's got Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, and Raging Bull.
We just watched Cape Fear for the first time for Never Scream
Yeah.
It, and that was wild.
I haven't personally seen that one. Either version, for that matter.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who else would be on this list.
So Lumet is on here with 12 Angry Men, Network, and Dog Day Afternoon. Coppola is on here with The Godfather Part 2, and The Conversation. Kubrick has 3 with 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Shining, and Dr. Strangelove. Christopher Nolan had 4 with The Dark Knight, Oppenheimer, Interstellar, and Memento. Quentin Tarantino has 4, partially because where we cut off the list at 120, Jackie Brown and Reservoir Dogs were tied. So he gets Pulp Fiction, Inglourious Bastards, Reservoir Dogs, and Jackie Brown. And the other 2 at 4, Alfred Hitchcock had 4 with Psycho, Vertigo, Rear Window, and Rebecca. And Billy Wilder had 4 with Sunset Boulevard, Some Like It Hot, Double Indemnity, and The Apartment.
Okay.
So those are all the ones with at least 3. There are a bunch of them with 2, like William Wyler's got 2, and Robert Wise has got 2, and Damien Chazelle's got 2. But those are... Oh, excuse me, I forgot. David Fincher also has 3 in here.
Okay.
He's got The Social Network, 7, and Fight Club also made it. So a couple of just quick genre breakdowns here. We had 4 animated films. Now, some of these definitions are a little bit loose by yours truly. So what qualifies in this next category, such as action? Who knows? But we supposedly had 12 action films. I think I may have been a little bit looser by including things like the Lord of the Rings movies, but I think there's enough action in those to probably qualify.
Yeah. Action adventure.
Yeah. Horror films, we roughly have 12. Again, I think that definition is a little loose because I included Jaws and Jurassic Park, which to some people it's not horror, but I think for the rest of those are pretty strictly horror films. We had 6 westerns, 8 comedies. Comedy also being a little loose because for the most part I included a couple of different Tarantino films, like Pulp Fiction is probably a comedy. Inglourious Bastards to me is definitely a comedy. Musicals. Now, I also included The Wizard of Oz here. I don't think many people consider that necessarily a musical, but I don't know how you couldn't.
I don't know why you would say that isn't a musical. There's a musical number every 10 minutes.
Fair. All right. Sci-fi movies, we had 13. And frankly, most of them were very high up the list. We had 2 different Star Wars movies. We ended up having Blade Runner in here. We had The Matrix, 2001, Back to the Future, Terminator 2. So a lot of these are much higher up the list. Alien. But ultimately, we ended up with 13 there. The 2 sports movies we had were Rocky and Raging Bull. Both boxing movies. Nothing else made the list. We had 9 fantasy movies, which, again, that's kind of a weird and loose definition. Like The Wizard of Oz and the 2 Lord of the Rings movies that did make the list got included here, but then what actually qualified as that was a little bit strange. And the back half of the list was also very heavy on war films, but we didn't have, I think, a specific war film that ranked above like the top 40. And we had other films that were kind of tangentially about war, like Schindler's List is in a war climate, but it's not about war itself. So I didn't include that. I also didn't include The Best Years of Our Lives, which is about soldiers coming back.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we just did a war movie series on the show. We included Civil War, which is not really about war. It's about journalism.
We also watched Wag the Dog, which is about spin.
Right.
About a fake war.
And Charlie Wilson's war.
Yeah, which it's only tangentially about it, I suppose.
Exactly.
So,
but of course, we also did Platoon and Full Metal Jacket.
Fair enough. Yeah. And finally, just for anybody who's counting at home, we had 27 total Best Picture winners, with Casablanca being the top of that list. So I think the majority of the Best Picture winners were back half driven, because I think 19 of the 27 that ended up finishing this high on the list were before we hit 40. So we only had like 8 in the top 40. But that being said, still a pretty good showing for Best Picture winners. I think a third of them roughly made.
The Casablanca is not the highest Best Picture.
Oh yeah, The Godfather. I'm sorry. You're correct.
Up until now.
Not to state the obvious, but
Yeah.
Fair enough. So any other major reactions here? I know that it's not unexpected. The Godfather, if you're naming the top films, The Godfather and Jaws often come up, but I don't think there's any major surprises other than where they were positioned in our top 10 here.
no, none of those are real surprises to me when you're adding everybody's contributions together and those consistently are coming up
It's the
near
consensus.
the top. Yeah.
Betsy, I think we might need to do a series next year to fill in my gaps and cover all of the ones on this list that I haven't seen. It is 4 of them, right?
For what?
4 of the top 10 that I haven't seen.
I don't know. I've lost track now.
Okay,
At least
fine.
3.
You said Singing in the Rain and 12 Angry Men. And The Godfather. So that's 3.
Is that just 3? Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
But yes, I know what you mean. We're filling in the blanks with anything that we haven't covered on our show so far, with anything from the list. Like, it gets an automatic entry when we have it next coming up for stuff that hasn't been scheduled to this point. So it would make sense to cover anything and everything in between all of those. And you can't go wrong with anything that's in the top 10, in my
Out
opinion.
of curiosity, how many on this list have you two not seen of the final list?
So by my own count in the final list, I think I have 108 out of 122
That you've watched?
that I've seen previously.
I have not counted.
If I were to take a guess, for my dad, I would say he's probably pretty close to around somewhere between 90 to 100 he's probably seen. And a lot of them during the course of our show would be my guess. I know that for the purposes of our show and what we've covered from the list, we've covered 73 out of the 122 films on the list.
Well, now that the whole list will be out in the universe, put out a little PDF with the full list and we'll go through and check box the ones we need to watch.
That's a good call. So that gives me a great segue to say that the entire list is available, and it has been in piecemeal as things have come out. But once this episode published, the entire list in full will be available to everybody on the website, RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmote podcast. I'm trying to figure out, because of all of the, I think it's like 11 or 12 ties that we had, how to work that in a letterboxed system. Maybe I'll just flip a coin as to differentiating between those. But essentially, we'll have that list hopefully available at some point in the near future on Letterboxd as well. And we'll continue to churn out the content. But yes, the list will be generally available to everyone in its entirety once this comes out. So everybody can dissect this for Christmas and New Year's, and maybe do what my dad and I have done over the last couple of years, which is plan a meal around a film and then watch the film.
Fun.
It was a way for me to spend time with both of my parents individually. I would help my mother cook whatever we were going to have for that, and then we'd watch the film together. So I'd spend time with my dad.
I've also seen people do it where they eat the food they eat in the movie. So if they have popcorn, you get popcorn. If they eat a steak, you get steak.
I think we did that for one of them, where we watched Ocean's 11 and we did everything that Brad Pitt's character eats.
Cocktail shrimp. And
Well, I mean, that's where your mother had a really good evening when we did Casablanca and we were doing the French 75s. Yeah.
Those hit like a hammer. Yeah. You can have one. You get to 2 and you're going to be collapsed by the end of the film.
Well, don't watch the movie Chef on an empty
oh
stomach.
no,
because there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
I've never been hungrier after watching a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Cuban sandwiches look great in that film.
I love a Cuban.
So, but any other remaining thoughts before we move on?
Good list.
All right. Thank you. I will say, in just closing out the list for the year, thank you to everybody who contributed, to all of our 39 people, to anyone who liked, shared, recommended, listened, whatever, anything having to do with the list, just period. Thank you. Anybody who found us for the first time, anybody who was just generally interested. I know that when we're recording this, our numbers are going off the charts. I think since July, our download numbers are up 300%.
Nice.
So I don't know how to express all of it. I don't know if I can even try. But the community response and how much we've been embraced by everybody for doing this project, how much we're looking forward to whatever the next iteration is. Thank you to everyone for being with us on this, for contributing, for doing anything that's involved. We want this to feel like a community project, and I think we've accomplished that. So we left off at best performances before the break. Dad, who do you have down here?
Okay, so can we just have a show of hands? Who does not have Carey Mulligan? Okay, Carey Mulligan.
Yeah.
Consensus.
Well, and I think by the same token, I have Emerald Fennell as my secondary performance because there's so much about this movie that's controlled by her, but this is one of the rare instances in this show where, given the level of performance by a director who also wrote the movie, but was so intimately controlling of every piece of what happened in this movie, to still be outshone by a performance on screen, we rarely have nominated in best performance somebody ahead of that. But in this particular case, it is incredibly well-deserved. Carey Mulligan, in my opinion, should have won the Oscar this year. I will still stand on that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Frances McDormand. And I don't want to make the argument that she had already had two. But I think you compare Nomadland versus Promising Young Woman, and it's really no contest for me.
And in another year, if this had come out in 2019 or something like that, and the circumstances were different, who knows? Because if people had seen the movie, I think the fundamental problem is it came out in 2020.
I lose superlatives to say on what she accomplishes in this movie. There's an intensity, there's a pain, there's definitely guilt here. There's so many small, subtle pieces behind what she's doing, but she actually, for a female part, gets one of the rare, huge, showy parts for a woman role, and I think she nails it.
Yeah. I love every second she's on this screen, and she is doing many, many, many different things, because she's, as I said earlier, kind of playing the daytime version of herself, which is really her, even though the real her kind of shut down in college, and this is just what's left. But then she puts on an entirely different persona for every time she goes out. That's a different person.
Yeah.
She's playing around with who she's going to be tonight.
For me personally, she's been nominated 3 times. I think this is the closest she's come, because while she was nominated for Maestro, I thought that was a fairly good performance. It isn't anything near this. I think the other one she's nominated for, is it Atonement? I might be wrong. An Education. Thank you. And that's a film I haven't seen, so I really can't judge. But she's one of these actresses that I think she could achieve more if she were just simply in more. Like there seems to be gaps where she picks only very selective roles, and when she does, it's outstanding. I just wish she was in more stuff.
Also, if you go back to the early 2000s, she's in one of the best episodes of Doctor Who there has ever been. And she leads the episode.
Yeah, and she's been on Broadway. She was not Tony nominated. She's also married to, and I can't remember, is it Marshall Mumford?
Oh.
It's the head of the lead singer and leader of the Mumford & Son band.
Mr. Mumford, as we call him.
So during this time frame, she's had children which is something that you have to take into account with actresses who are in their 30s and early 40s. You know, they want to have a family and they end up taking the time off for this. And, you know, it disrupts their career a bit. And I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. And that's the way life is. And, you know, I hope she gets back or gets another opportunity to have a really good role. You know, she's got another film coming out this year.
She does have something coming out. I don't know too much about it, though.
Yeah, because that was when she was on Kimmel this week promoting it.
I just hope that it's not another Glenn Close situation where she gets nominated over and over again and then just never gets it.
Oh, I thought for sure she was going to end up getting it for a hillbilly elegy, and I'm going,
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
Ugh.
You mean Glenn Close. Thankfully, Carey Mulligan was not in that movie.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it right now, but The Ballad of Wallace Island.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that came out earlier this year, maybe?
Don't know.
But maybe not a wide release.
I haven't really seen anything on it, so I'm not really sure. But again, it's like she does maybe one, maybe two films in a year, and it's very sparing.
She was in Saltburn very briefly, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got only like a very small cameo because she's like a friend of the family of the estate. I mean, she's great in that minimal time on screen, but it's a very small fraction. So, all right. But anybody else have Fennell as their secondary performer then?
For secondary performer, I have somebody different.
Okay. So who did you have then?
I put Alfred Molina because when he showed up in this movie, I had no idea he was going to be in it. And he is the one person who actually is as haunted by what happened as she is, if not more, because he actually, as he says, I had an epiphany. They called it a psychotic break, but I've had an epiphany that I have been doing something really horrible with my life. And he works for one of those law firms that specializes in this kind of law, where their whole existence is getting people off for something they probably did and are guilty of doing. And the lawyers know they're guilty of doing it. And they will go above and beyond to ruin people's lives. And he says, that was the environment I worked in. And now I remember your friend. And she is taken so aback that he is the first person who remembers. He says her name and he says he's sorry, please forgive me. And he only has that one scene, but it has stuck with me for 5 years.
Yeah.
Because he's such a good actor and he makes the most of every moment he is in this movie.
As I mentioned, Alfred Molina is the only one to really take her aback. Like, she is not expecting any of this. And he captures the moment of the movie the way that she had been capturing everybody's attention because she is the focus. In this scene, she's kind of small and he is on his knees begging for forgiveness. And she's just, yes, I forgive you. And she wasn't expecting it. She tells the goon outside, no, you don't have to go in there and beat him up. Yeah. Alfred Molina is also on my list. But I also wanted to mention Alison Brie, because she goes from that moment where she, as I said before, about being very, hearkening back to when we were in college together and we're going to catch up like old friends when we are nothing but. And the mea culpa, as you said, that she has to do at the end scene there, where she is a different person after this experience of being in that hotel room and she does not know what happened. So I wanted to point her out as well.
And it's another example of somebody that is pop culturally known that gets cast in this movie. And her character, for the most part, is very wholesome. She's Annie from Community, who is like the goody two-shoes from that. And yet she's in this movie against type. So to be fair, I mean, there's many examples of that. And also, Alfred Molina is the only cast member from this movie not to be mentioned in the credits.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
I never noticed that.
Is there a reason why?
I didn't see why, but no.
Maybe they wanted it to be a surprise, and that's the only reason. But you'd think it would be in the credits then. But sometimes people don't. Like, if you watch Tommy Boy, Tommy Boy has a very prevalent role with Rob Lowe, and he said, please don't put me in the credits. There was some reason I don't remember offhand, but he's not credited in that movie either, even though he is like the fourth billed person, basically.
Right. So, Dad, you also had Fennell. What about her body of work here? Let's say that.
How could you write this, direct it, and do this quality of work both at the same time and not get credited for it? And the only reason, again, that I said she didn't get number one is because Carey Mulligan provided a performance that probably is, once in a decade level of performance. And that's the only reason. So I have no problem. I would have, in any other film, I probably would have had Fennell as number one or as primary.
Ditto. I really don't have anything else to add. I think I said it before, but I think this is a very educated, very matured version of directing. She wins the Oscar for the screenplay. There's just really not a whole lot to add. By a totality of the body of the work, she probably should be best performance, except for Carey Mulligan just owning this film. So then we go to most charismatic here, and probably in a surprise to no one, I have Bo Burnham.
Oh,
Me
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I did too.
Which is what makes the end so cruel.
Yeah. But he's great in this. He's got this aloofness, this playfulness, this I want to see beyond your baggage nature, and then to have it flip on a dime like you just feel so betrayed by him. But he's somebody that I enjoy anytime he's popped up, whether that be his very small episode that he does on Parks and Rec, or it's his one man I'm alone in my man cave during COVID show that was on Netflix.
I wanted to point out here one thing that I got this time that I didn't do the other times. When he goes into the coffee shop for the first time and he recognizes her, like, hey, I know you, you're Cassie, right? And he says the line that essentially means, what the hell are you doing in this shitty coffee shop? Why aren't you a doctor? At that moment, you can say you are being shitty to her in this moment. Yes, he apologizes. He tries to take it back and everything like that. But that should have been a trigger that he does see himself above her at some level.
And you could have played it off, and I think most of us do, that he's just awkward with women.
Absolutely.
He says the wrong thing. And at the beginning, yeah, it's cute. But by the end, he goes into defensive mode when he thinks that she's going to expose this video.
Yep.
And she's like, and he says something like, go on, go, you fucking failure. And he starts like insulting her.
Then neither of us will be doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like even he goes to that place at the end of the movie where you think, oh, he's this nice guy. He says he's a nice guy. But then when she confronts him, he turns into an asshole.
Yeah, even the nicest of guys can stoop to that level.
I still, he's so fun in this movie, and it has to work on that level. And he's probably the best form of casting because he feels so innocent through most of the film.
Yes. And you root for them. You root for them actively that she is going to overcome this thing that has been eating away at her for more, half a decade, and that she's going to put it aside and they're going to be in love and everything's going to be happy endings forever, and it's not. And that's what's so harsh about it.
Yeah. All right, let's move to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here. I have the opening prey, let's say, scene where we see Adam, is it Adam Brody?
Adam
I
Brody.
think that's right. Yeah, Adam Brody get his comeuppance, sort of. We see the point at where it's about to happen, and then we don't know what happens after that. And we get that a little bit later, but it's kind of like that opening tease. Then we have Christopher Mintz-Plass's scene, which is the actual reveal where she finally attacks somebody, let's say. Verbally, of course, not actually physically, but as cocaine lines. Then we have the lunch with Madison, confronting Ryan, the scene we were just talking about, and then the wedding, which is kind of like the epilogue tacked on at the end. But this is a movie that I think I probably missed 5 good scenes in here just to nominate these 5. So What else should I have nominated?
Dancing in the pharmacy.
Yeah, the pharmacy scene.
The dean.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good scene too.
Definitely. I like the image, the very, very opening image of all of the men in the khakis dancing in the club, which is completely against type, where normally you would open a movie with a bunch of dancing girls in their party dresses and whatnot, but no, it's a bunch of, douchey guys.
And the bachelor party itself.
And even amongst these, I could probably nominate 3 or 4 more, but let's go with these. I think it's 8 here. Opening Prey, Cocaine Lines, Lunch with Madison, Pharmacy, Dean Walker, Confronting Ryan, Bachelor Party, and Wedding. What is the best scene?
The dean. That's why I had mentioned it or added it, because that's the first time where you really saw her manipulate the person into a position where they come to realize the errors of their behavior and understand the ramifications of it by making it personal and making them feel what the other person was feeling. It's a forced empathy.
If I may briefly talk about that scene, I think it's the first one where maybe I stopped rooting for Cassie for a moment, because I'm like, oh my God, did you pick up a child and really do something evil to them? And you take this second back, okay, revenge is one thing, but you might be going a little bit too far. So there's that.
At that moment, you believe that she is capable of doing such a thing, though.
Yes. And that's why it's effective. I mean, the whole scene is predicated on you believing that she could do something. Still masterful. It is not my best scene, however. I have Confronting Ryan for a lot of the reasons we just stated. I think there's so much built into the emotion of that, because the romantic part has been building towards that moment ever since you hear his voice on the video, and then him having to actually confront for the first time what his role is in all of this. And then it flips. It's just, man, I find so much good in that film, or excuse me, in that scene.
Betsy?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, this is a really hard one, because these are all such good scenes. I'm kind of partial to Cocaine Lines, simply because, like you said, the first time we get a little tease, and this is the scene where she really lays it out. And
you get to see all of it.
Yeah, and she lays into this guy, saying, okay, we had a connection, let's test that theory. And he is so terrified of her in this moment. And she's just standing there. She's just standing there expressing herself and pointing out, dude, this is the position you put yourself in. What did I say to get myself here?
And you can follow the bodies going through the room. She is stalking him as if he was her prey. And by the end, she does put her hands on him, pushes him against the wall. But in reality, dude, what were you about to do anyway? You were high on cocaine, and you don't know her name. You don't know anything about her. You just got a pretty girl in your apartment, and you're going to have your way with her. What?
Yeah. And when you see the full, you see here and a few other scenes, how far she lets this go. She lets this go extremely far before she reveals that she is sober. She sets up the trap, and when he is fully in the trap is when she pounces.
I'm going to say I really enjoy it's a combination of the scene in the pharmacy talking about the Paris Hilton song, and it's their kind of dating montage where they are falling in love. It's the normal thing that you would get in a romantic comedy, but it's that slap in the face when Alison Brie comes over and presents the video, and she watches it. You can hear everything. You don't need to see anything. You can hear everything, and the tears just start coming down her face. It's at that moment that she knows, I can't do this. I cannot give this up because of what was just presented to me. I can't forget this. Even though when she goes to visit the mother, Molly Shannon, even the mother says, you need to move on. You need to get past this. Which I don't know where else we're going to talk about this. I wanted to point out something that I only thought of right before we started recording this. Do you think here that there's only Molly Shannon? We don't see a father or a husband here. Do you think that whatever happened caused that to not be a thing? Was there a divorce here? Or, because a lot of marriages cannot survive the death of a child.
Maybe.
Just a thought experiment.
I guess I hadn't really gone that far in my considerations. My obvious thought pattern went to Nina, because we never explicitly get what her demise actually was. If she's actually dead, we, for a good portion of the film, are not privy to that information. It is very slowly revealed. And she's never pictured. There's no lockets. There's no pictures anywhere. There's one picture of the two of them together as kids.
Yeah, not as an adult.
Right.
Yeah.
But outside of that, we never see her. It is only Carey Mulligan's experience as Cassie with Nina that we get.
Because Nina's supposed to be the every woman. You don't want a face. You want her to be faceless.
And I think that's a good stroke or a good idea of what the film's going to be about. But I guess I never went further to answering such a question as that. And it just never, frankly, occurred to me. I think it's incredibly possible. My best friend, when I was 9 years old, passed away. I know that was incredibly hard for his family. And if not for them being grounded in a particular faith, I think that probably would have ruined them. So I could see it. I guess I'm not sure where I would go with that, especially because there's no inkling as to anybody outside of Cassie's experience is very limited here. It is almost entirely from her perspective.
It might hint towards other ramifications outside of Cassie and her realm of whatever. That obviously this is her daughter, and even if she is allowing herself to move on and tell other people to move on, then maybe Cassie has been taking this a little bit too far and too long, like thinking about this and doing all these things. Like maybe she does really need to move on. But when that video comes out, then she decides, no, I need to go all the way.
Well, and I think it's not understanding what the relationship between the two of them was. I think the mother is always going to want to be the person to take it the hardest, the most. And so she's obviously going to be holding on to that forever because it's the loss of her child. Part of the other reason I guess I would defer to that there was no father as opposed to a divorce happens to be that she says during her monologue at the end that she had to leave school so that she could take care of her. To me, that indicates there were fewer people around to be able to help deal with whatever situation was there. But even as so much as they were friends, they were best friends, the mother, of course, knows who Cassie is. I'm sure was like a second mother to her. There's always a certain privilege that I think parents possess that only they can love a child of theirs in the same way. And I think the relationship is obviously different, but I don't think she fully understands the relationship between Nina and Cassie to that level that would drive Cassie to have such a profound sense of guilt, one, and be driven to this kind of action, two. Let's move to favorite scene then. Mine is the lunch with Madison. Everybody has that person that they went to high school or college with who they thought was really fake and that they really want to stick it to. And yes, this is a dastardly scene, but it's not to a point for me that feels too far yet. And so it's just skirting that line of like, how far would you really take to get back at somebody who you feel wronged by? And I think this is just about that line. So it gives me a small bit of devilish pleasure.
It's my favorite scene as well. I can just say I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to my 40th class reunion, high school class reunion. And by that time, most of the superficial people have skirted out because they realize their superficial behavior no longer plays well with people who are mature and have life experiences. So either they are having to show up and admit that everything they, claimed or thought they were going to do has never materialized, or that they're just full of shit. And so you ended up with a core of people who were very much more realistic and very much more grounded. And it's not necessarily people I hung around with in high school, but people who I did know and you were able to have nice conversations with. So I understand perfectly. And that's one of the reasons why that whole superficial bullshit of people going in and, pretending and, the kiss and, oh, it's so good to see you. You just wanted to slap her. To see her get her comeuppance again, there was a certain level of satisfaction.
Yeah, I think my favorite scene is the one with Alfred Molina, just because it is the moment where Cassie is taken aback and she has been so put together and so coordinated and everything has been executed perfectly that this is the last reaction she expected, for anybody to actually have remorse about what happened and their part that they played. And it throws her off so physically when he gets closer. You think she's afraid in this situation. Her body language completely changes. And when she actually forgives him, she starts crying. And there's this moment where you think, maybe she can heal. Maybe she will be able to let this go and move on with her life.
She even tells him, you can sleep now.
Yeah. The glimmer that maybe there are people out there on her side. And then,
and
doesn't come to fruition, but
and she has the ability to forgive.
She has the ability. Yes.
Yeah.
She can. It is within her to forgive people.
Certainly.
Yeah. That's my favorite scene as well. Just because he takes over the movie at that point and you do not expect, number one, you don't expect him to be there. And it's Alfred Molina of all people. And she is going in there and you kind of know, okay, you lay out the story. You remember this case. Well, yeah, I'm a good lawyer. I remember all my cases. And you could envision a scene where instead of asking for forgiveness, he would say, I did my job. I got paid a lot of money to do my job and I did it well. Get out of my house. And then he gets beat up by the goon outside. I don't know. But I think it works much, much better to not only allow some kind of forgiveness and have an ally at the end of the movie with somebody that she can send the tape to, but it shows Cassie the character that she can forgive somebody, even though they were a big part of getting somebody off.
As far as most indelible, for me, it's the ending. The wedding, the text messages, knowing exactly that it, at least giving you the hint that it was planned, if not outright that was the conclusion that she wanted for herself. It was the number one thing I remembered about the movie coming back 5 years later and affected my viewing this second time.
My most indelible is the bachelor party and the death scene. And it's for this reason, which is Al was exposed for what he really was. No matter what the facade, no matter, the fact that he was a successful doctor and he was going to be an anesthesiologist, there was a deep-seated violence under him that was able to be exposed that really was the basis of his being and his inability to control that rage. And ultimately, that's what we're talking about. I mean, the concept that rape is sexual is not accurate. It's violence and it's a sense of control. And she, by this act or her behavior, was able to expose his desire to maintain control because he lost control. He's at a completely vulnerable point. He's handcuffed. His behavior is exposed. And that vulnerability, he lashes out, and his violent tendencies that are internal that make him a boiling cauldron overflow.
Yeah, I also put the bachelor party, if for nothing else, the image of her in that multicolored wig dressed as a nurse.
Yeah.
You know what she is doing, and she is so in control of that situation. And then, as you touched on, she quickly becomes not in control of the situation.
And the fact that she trusts that all of these men are going to behave how she thinks that they're going to behave. All of the guys downstairs are going to take all the shots and be drugged with whatever she put in the drinks.
The fact
everything
the fact
goes exactly
that
how she thinks.
somebody says, who ordered the stripper? And nobody owns up to it,
Yeah.
but they assume it's because nobody wants to confess, when in reality, no one ordered a stripper and not one guy in that room thought that was odd.
Yeah.
They just roll with it.
They all wanted to participate.
And then they encourage their soon-to-be married friend to sleep with the stripper.
Right.
Because his fiance will never find out.
Going along with just knowing the behavior of these men.
Yeah. She has laid it all out. She has everything figured, and they just fall right into her trap.
So really, Betsy, all of this time that she's been going out at night, she knows. She's already done all of her research.
Call it practice, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, that looks like a good spot for our second break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our Master Greatest Movies of All Time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find it as the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 264 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Gil Gerard, 82, American actor. Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Airport 77. And The Doctors. Anthony Geary, 78, American actor. General Hospital. UHF. Teacher's Pet. And lastly, Rob Reiner, 78, American actor, All in the Family, The Wolf of Wall Street, and film director. This is Spinal Tap, When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride,
A Few Good Men,
Few Good Men, The American President,
Stand By Me.
Yes. Emmy winner, 1974, 1978.
I should briefly acknowledge that Anthony Geary and Rob Reiner actually appeared on All in the Family together. And so there was a lot made of the fact that they both passed away on the same day on social media the last few days or so. I also should point out, this is the first time that we have memorialized someone who is technically in the G-Mode Hall of Fame before we got to recognize them publicly. I mean, he's obviously in the G-Mode Hall of Fame going back a few months ago when we did the American President on the show, but he did not get his gold jacket or his plaque or anything else that we would be giving to him as a show before he unfortunately passed away in what I think are very publicly known tragic circumstances that I don't need to revisit here. But given your affinity and affection for the Reiner family,
Yes.
particularly Carl, and then passed on to Rob, I'll clear out and let you wax poetic here.
He is one of the stars or the people that I grew up with. A large portion of the Dick Van Dyke Show, which is one of the childhood shows, his father produced, directed, wrote most of the scripts. Rob was a key factor, and a lot of the stories that were told were real life events that happened to Rob. So he grew up on that set. Then you go on to All in the Family. Well, for that matter, before that, he was a co-writer with some other guy that isn't real well known by the name of Steve Martin. That's it. They were the comedy writers for the Smothers Brothers, which I also watched as a kid. And then All in the Family, getting to watch him working with his father's longtime friend, Norman Lear, on that show. Then he went into directing, and I was one of the first people to see Spinal Tap. It was not shown in the movie theaters around me. I saw it on video and was raving about it from early on. And then the whole list of films: Princess Bride, Misery, When Harry Met Sally, and then A Few Good Men and The American President.
his acting performances in random stuff like Sleepless in Seattle.
Yes. I mean, he's had such an impact on the culture and in movies in general. The thing that I found most fascinating about him is, admittedly, he's been a very public and vocal person as far as his politics. But yet you see very conservative people such as Laura Ingraham and James Woods, who talked about how he was very gracious, kind to them, treated them with great respect, because it was just politics. It was just difference of opinions. He did not carry animosity towards people because of their opinions. And everybody has commented about how great he was. Noah Wiley, I just saw an interview with him yesterday where he talked about, he was a virtual unknown when he was on A Few Good Men. Rob Reiner came over, hugged him, introduced him around the group of people and, talk about how good of an actor he was and how he was going to be great in the part. He said it was just an instantaneous bond with him and a way that it just made him feel like he was part of the group and comfortable. And that wasn't just him. I heard multiple people talk about how kind and wonderful he is. It's a tragedy for him. His wife, Michelle, was a gifted photographer. And now for the remaining Reiner family, I don't know what more to say. It's a tragedy.
There's really no two ways about it. To address the circumstances surrounding it is horrid and difficult and whatever else. One thing that I did consider, and it was a comment from somebody that made my mind go there for you, given your affection from Carl Reiner has to do with his very famous partnership with somebody else.
Yes.
And who had to talk to Mel. It's certainly not a way to end what's been, for most people in this country, an incredibly difficult year.
I mean, people don't realize Rob Reiner is the reason Seinfeld became a hit. Castle Rock Entertainment produced Seinfeld. And if it was not for Rob Reiner having a shouting match with Brandon Tarakoff, Seinfeld would have been off after 6 episodes.
I mean, that's frankly why he had as much money as he did, between that and the other number of things that he helped produce through that production company, let alone one of the top 5 greatest movies of all time when it comes to the CLP list, The Shawshank Redemption. I mean, there's a ton under the Castle Rock banner that he got proceeds from and helped produce as a result of that. So, yes, he may not be like one of the pantheon directors of all time, but for a large portion of people that maybe are just slightly older than I, his impact is resounding, to say the least. And I know that we've often talked about the people that will pass on from that generation here very soon, but this was not one I was expecting. Not that I think any of them or anybody were expecting, whether that was Gene Hackman or Robert Redford or Diane Keaton earlier this year. And so the In Memoriam challenge, when we get to it at that point, for the Oscars coming up here, our annual tiebreaker is going to be extremely difficult just based on those 4 names alone. But, man, I really do hope that 2026 is a little kinder to us and to the people that we still have left with us. And so we take a moment here to honor all of these for their contributions to the arts, to philanthropy, to anything that they did during their lives, with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. That brings us to best funniest lines. I will start off with the first nominee here. I have the obvious here, Al Monroe. It's every man's worst nightmare, getting accused of something like that. Cassie, can you guess what every woman's nightmare is?
That's kind of the movie. That is encompassing everything that we're talking about here.
Cassie, look how easy that was. I guess you just had to think about it the right way. I guess it feels different when it's someone you love.
Mine was actually Cassie's dad saying, Nina was like a daughter to us as well, and we miss her, but we really missed you.
Ryan, dating's horrible. Everyone's horrible, okay? I went on a date last month with a woman who wanted to euthanize the homeless. Cassie, you went on a date with my mom?
Susan, your parents must be very proud. Ryan, not really. They wanted me to be a DJ.
That actually is pretty good.
She wrote down almost every line out of Bo Burnham.
Anything that made me laugh.
Cassie, Nina was extraordinary, so smart, weirdly smart. She was so completely herself, even when she was 4 years old. She was fully formed from day one. Same face, same walk, and funny. Like a grown-up is funny, kind of shrewd. I was just in awe of her. I couldn't believe she wanted to be my friend. She didn't give a fuck what anyone thought apart from me because she was just Nina. And then she wasn't. Suddenly, she was just something else. She was yours. It wasn't her name she heard when she was walking around. It was yours. Your name all around her, all over her, all the time. And it just squeezed her out. So when I heard your name again, your filthy fucking name, I wondered, when was the last time anyone said hers, or thought it even, apart from me? And it made me so sad because Al holds up a scalpel. You should be the one with her name all over you.
Neil, I'm a nice guy. Cassie, are you? Neil, I thought we had a connection, I guess. Cassie, a connection? Okay. What do I do for a living? Sorry, maybe that one's too hard. How old am I? How long have I lived in the city? What are my hobbies? What's my name?
That was always the kicker one for me.
Joe, you killed the stripper at your bachelor party? What is this, the 90s? L, classic.
I'll read one of hers. Do you want to go to dinner, you miserable asshole?
Mrs. Fisher, Cassie, move on, please. For all of us. Any others still out there? Otherwise, I have one more.
I have one more. Ryan, think about this, please, please. Cassie, I cannot begin to tell you how much I've thought about it.
And that was the one I had. So that looks like a good fitting spot to move on. All right, let's go to the Stanley rubric here. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film, approximately 5 years after it came out to today. Because this came out 5 years ago, we have to basically imagine what the legacy of the film is going to be, unless we just talk about it right here in the right now. And it has not had the benefit of longevity. But with that, we still split this between two key, important, and equal groups, the audience and the industry, for a total of 10 points, 5 and 5 apiece. Dad, would you like to go first or second here?
I'll go first. From the industry, I think this further cemented Carey Mulligan as a consummate actress. I think it helped propel her. I think that there would have been potentially more, but she, again, as I pointed out, was in that age where she was married and was having, I think she had a child right before this, and then had a child or announced that she was pregnant during the Academy Awards night. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I got that right. So from the industry, I think it's a 3. I think that it could have been higher. I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt because of that. I think Emerald Fennell kind of got cemented as a director with something to say. I think she probably, because of the type of film she wants and what she wants to say and do, has more limited opportunities. The real problem, so I'm at a 3 overall, but let me put it this way.
You're at a 3 overall when you haven't even...
For the industry, excuse me, I misspoke. Okay. For the public The problem is that, again, this is the informal poll in my office. Not one person other than your mother could say that they even knew what the film was. And we have a couple people who are pretty knowledgeable on film in the office, that at least they will raise their hand because they've seen it or heard of it. No one had seen it. No one had heard of it. No one could say anything about who was in it. Your mother couldn't say anything more than she knows the film. She couldn't remember if she saw it. Afterwards, I had to remind her what the film was about, because then she goes, oh, yeah, I do remember that now. Okay, good, honey. That's great. I think for people who are really into film, the true cinephile, this has meaning and impact. So I'm going to give it 1.5 for that group. But for the general public, this film has been nothing. And it's a shame. I wish somehow or another this film would have been able to get legs somehow. Maybe we need to go back to the days where this is run over and over and over again on TNT so that it gets a Shawshank treatment.
Well, I will actually be quite different from you. So from an industry standpoint, you can look at the nominations. You can look at Fennell's win. You can look at the fact that she got permission, basically, or a permission structure to go on and do multiple other, not small or insignificant budget films. She is somewhat of a lightning rod or a controversial figure among the cinephile community or class. And Carey Mulligan, while I wouldn't say that she was like a small player or that people didn't know of her or anything else, I think this is another one where somebody comes back around and has like one of these really great performances and people remember her. So the fact that she goes on to do something like Maestro or has the opportunity, I think she can really be selective with what she wants to do when she wants to do stuff because of the clout that she earned through this performance in this movie. It didn't end up winning anything other than the one Oscar, but I do think that by itself is somewhat important because normally the screenplay awards anymore seem to be given to auteurs who are making like one of their first films, and the Academy kind of wants to recognize, somewhat in the same way that Jordan Peele won the only Oscar for Get Out for the screenplay. And this has kind of become what this award has meant for the last few years. We want to recognize somebody who we think really is coming up and we want to give an award to, but we want to spur them to other success. And by putting this on their resume, they can go do stuff.
Happened with Sarah Polley with Women Talking.
Exactly.
Same thing.
Matt Damon and
Ben Affleck.
Taika Waititi, Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by that extension, I'm going to give that a 4.5 because I do think where it sits in the industry, maybe not necessarily because of this movie, but I think it works somewhat in that capacity. That will wane over time. But where we're sitting 5 years out, I think it does have an impact because it's part of a larger body of work with particularly those two people. And then you throw in all of the other cast members that I do think get some level of benefit, some against type, but also just somewhat participation points for being in this. On the other side, I agree with you. This is not publicly well known, but as you know, I tend to give points if the film nerd community or the cinephile community has seen it in a way that the community at large has not. Once we pare back that almost nobody in the general audience, the casual viewer, has seen this, you can knock off a couple of points there. Then you can probably subtract that even amongst the film community, I don't know how many of them have even seen this. This was kind of one of the lowest telecast Oscars for ratings that ever happened. It was the Train Depot Oscars. I will pare that back to a 2, but that puts me at a 6.5 compared to your 4.5.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Tom. It's more about this was a COVID year, and in another era, this movie might have completely swept, everything that it got nominated for if it had a better exposure, if people had the word of mouth, like all your girlfriends go to see it and it just spreads that way. But it is what it is. So I think you're right in that Emerald Fennell really got a name for herself in the film community and just filmmakers in general. It gave her permission to do all these other movies herself. Also, I think when I remember us talking about the movie in our first episode that we did, I think the fact that the movie got made in the first place and it was successful in that way, it also gave permission for other types of movies to be made. Like, think about that Bombshell movie, about the people at Fox News. I don't think you would have gotten that movie made without this other movie. That's my opinion. But because the movie itself exists, it was put out, people saw it, that is significant in and of itself. So I'm going to give it a 4 on the industry side, but I'm with everybody else here that the public, I'm going to give it, I'm grading on a curve because it was a COVID year. I'm going to give the public a 2. And I really have nothing else to add to that. Nobody saw it. And I understand why.
Yeah. As I'm listening to you guys talk, it is making me remember that, yes, there are a lot of good things. I think industry, I give it a 4 because it got nominated for Best Picture. When you look at Carey Mulligan's career, you're gonna talk about Promising Young Woman. This is going to be something that people bring up. I think for the topic, the subject matter, if you're grouping it with other movies of this kind, it's gonna be on those lists. I think it has allowed Emerald Fennell, I don't know why I struggle with that name, to have the career that she has had. So it was extremely well received by the critics, but because it came out in 2020, we will never know what that would have done for the public. But I do think that people who see it really like it. That's the struggle. By all rights, this should be a cult classic, or in maybe a few years, it's gonna be as people get the opportunity. So I'm with you. I gave it a 2 for the audience. So I think that puts me at a 6.
Yeah, same.
So that is a 5.75 average between the 4 of us. Let's move to impact and significance. This, like the category before, is a split category between the industry and the audience, but instead of thinking about the long-term legacy after the initial 5 years, this is about the initial 5 years after it came out. Now, I think that some of our legacy arguments are going to bleed into this naturally because it's only 5 years old. We have no ability to judge the timelessness or whatever else approaching this category. But with that being said, I think that I'm basically at the same 6.5. I may look at it a little bit differently where it's the industry in the initial period as things are starting to blossom out or burgeon yet for both of the primary people involved, that maybe it's not as high. And I do think in the initial, because it was nominated for Best Picture, there are enough people that probably saw it as a result of that and got more attention and whatever else. So I'll still end at my 6.5, but I'll say it's a 4 and a 2.5 instead this time.
With all due respect to all three of you, most of your arguments are on impact and significance and not on legacy. Because of the fact that this film is only 5 years old, legacy has to be legacy counting where it is today, not where it's been over the last 5 years. On that note, for industry, it got all those nominations. It should have been Carey Mulligan's win for Best Actress. It got one for Best Screenplay. It should have a 4.5 for the industry. Taking into account the fact that the public was not going to the movies. So weighting that into and of itself, I think it would have done better. I think you would have had more water cooler promotion of the film. We would have been, oh my God, I went and saw this movie last night and the subject matter is kind of tough, but Carey Mulligan, oh my God, you have to go see her do this film. I think it would have done much better. I think it possibly would have made, instead of the 18 million, it probably would have made 40, maybe even 50 million. So I'm at a 3 for the public. So when you combine all this and take it into account of where it was, and quite frankly, let me point out this, and I hate to say it this way, but the fact is that during this 5 years, we had the Me Too movement. And unfortunately, it is kind of
What was it during this period, or wasn't it before that?
Well, I think it started, but I mean, it's kind of waned since then. In the last few years, it has really, it's kind of like people are looking the other way again. And I'm sorry to say that. So
you're most definitely right. I think the backlash to it, because of the era, and I have to tie the things together. We don't shy away from politics on this show, and I apologize if this is something sensitive, but it is somewhat a byproduct of people thinking of the cancel culture and the attacks on the right and the Trump era and everything else that goes into that. That is somewhat of a byproduct of a lot of people saying we got unfairly judged and lumped in when we actually were nice guys.
It's the whole idea of not all men, you know.
Yeah, well,
same.
But unfortunately, when you're talking about men, we end up, having to abide by the general gender proclivities and all that. And it isn't all men, but unfortunately, I don't think any man can come into these situations with completely clean hands. There are things that should have been said or done. There should have been some things that should have been said to other guys who were misbehaving. There should have been things that happened. So the idea that you're exonerated or that somehow you have no culpability in this process is bullshit. And until we can come to terms with that again, I think, unfortunately, we're going to see history repeat itself. I hate to say that, but whatever it is. So I think to that extent, there's some of that. But I'm at a 7.5 because I think really within that 5 years, that's where it's had its significance. I think as today, that has waned.
That's fair.
In that same gender dynamic, just the fact that the varying reactions that we both had, I'm fidgeting in my seat. I'm squirming because I feel so uncomfortable physically. Meanwhile, she is cheering it on, saying, yeah, get him. It's something that you just don't get. And we're going to talk about that in a second, I'm sure. But I think I'm with you, Tom. I have no different. I can't think about this movie with Legacy and not having it's all kind of the same to me, even though it has been 5 years, but I still think about this movie just personally. So I can't really think about the Legacy and the impact and significance separately. So I'm at the exact same score. I'm at, what did I say? A 4 and a 2. Yeah.
So a 6. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm at a 4 and a 3. Just kind of for everything everyone else has been saying. And what I said before, by rights, this should be a cult classic. I think as long as the problem exists, people will come back to this movie.
Yeah, it is still a relevant movie.
Okay, so that is a 6.75 average between the three of us. Fuck. Okay, that is a 6.75 average between the four of us. I got to leave that in. I'm sorry. I keep doing it, and I just need to leave it in. All right. Anyway, let's move to Novelty then. This is a measure of, as of this year, a split category between the originality of the idea and the execution on the idea. 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. I will lead, but only slightly, in saying, other than the fact that we have other revenge movies, I give this a 4.5. I only take that small half step down because this has the caveat of being a hot button topic, and no other revenge movie is because of basically sexual violence. Everything else has to do, you think about Kill Bill we mentioned before, that has to do with being nearly killed or your love being killed or any other number of things that were a part of it. You talk about Lady Vengeance, that is a completely different subject material. This is one specific to the topic and the political or the cultural touchstone that is sexual violence and the community response and all the other pieces of it. So I give that a greater weight. I have a 4.5 there. I'm only taking a small half step down. But on an execution level, I really don't have much to argue with. So I would like the benefit of the doubt by saying, I'm going to leave this to the group and see where everybody's at and maybe come back around to this. I'm going to start at a 4.5 and see how it pans out. So whomever would like to go here.
Would you like to go?
Betsy?
I didn't break these up in that way exactly, but I have it at a 9 overall.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about the execution, like this is what I said, a really confidently made movie. And it is interesting to look at, and she's playing with color. And there's things that are subtle that you'll notice if you're really looking for them, like the way she switches out which name she's wearing on the broken heart necklace, and the fact she's got pastel colors on her fingernails the whole movie. And that is what she's wearing at the end of the movie when she's wearing that wig. So it's with her, it's ever present. And the religious iconography, like you mentioned, angel's wings, and even down to the song choices. There are so many musical cues in this movie where the songs, when played against this scene, have a completely different meaning.
You should mention that King and I thing.
Oh, yeah. When they're burning her body and they're playing Something Wonderful from The King and I, if you actually read the lyrics to that song, it's all about how, oh, yeah, he does bad things, but we still have to love him anyway, because sometimes, once in a while, he does something nice. And that changes completely when you are watching this movie and what's being played against it.
While they are hovering over a burning body.
Yeah. So this movie was considered across the board. So yeah, I gave it a 9 overall.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what Betsy said. I think execution is a 5. I cannot say anything that could be improved here. As far as novelty, I'm going to give that, I'll give that a 4.5 like you. It's surprising that I thought about this movie this time as a kind of a horror movie, because we've been watching so many horror movies for our various shows. Just the framing and how things are scored, the musical cues, all the little stingers that they have in here. Yeah. Altogether, I'm going to give it a 9.5.
I had not thought of this until about a minute and a half ago. This is not a revenge film. This is a suicide film. This is one long effort on her part to seek revenge, but in the context of she ultimately wants to end her pain. And the film that came to mind was a film that I first saw in 1982. It's a early 1950s film called DOA with Edmund O'Brien, where he is given poison and he is told that he has 12 hours to live. And then he spends the entire, he goes into to the police station and says, "I'd like to report a death." And he says, "Whose? Mine." And then the story unfolds that he's given this poison. He's got 12 hours to live. He spends the entire movie seeking revenge, finding the person who murdered him to kill him, and then shows up at the police station to tell them the story and then dies.
Wow.
Interesting.
Okay.
I was not familiar with this movie.
Yeah, it is a really good film. I recommend finding it. It's probably rather obscure in finding it at this point in time. But ultimately, that's what this film is the entire thing is she knows that this situation has killed her. If not internally, it eventually will kill her externally. And she's going about whatever she can to try to reduce her pain, but yet at the same time to seek whatever retribution she can get in the path there. Originality, other than DOA, I could not think of a film like that. So I'm at a 5. And the execution, I had a 5, but I had to go 1/2 point down, which is there is a fundamental flaw in Fennell's script, which is the fact is that his power, his prestige, his family, his privilege is what got him out of it to begin with. And what exactly is going to prevent that from happening the second go round? Even though she set this all up, ultimately hiring all the big lawyers, there's going to be a price to pay. He's going to be a marked man. He's never going to be able to find anything that truly is going to allow him to have his career, his marriage as it starts is over, etc. He's going to have a price to pay, but it's not going to completely destroy him, probably. And that's the fundamental flaw. So I'm giving it a half point down for that. So I'm at a 9.5.
However, argue she's okay with that because her whole plan seemed like she was just going to give him a homemade tattoo. And that was going to be the end of it. You know, that seems like she would have been satisfied with just that. So even if he gets off, he's never going to be rid of it. So I think she'd still be happy with that outcome. He would have some sort of consequence to what he did.
Dragging him through the potential of a full trial in and of itself does accomplish something, even in the court of public opinion.
Okay. You persuade me because I was really struggling on the 0.5. So I will go up to my full 5. I am at a 10 for Novelty.
You fucker. I hate every time you do this.
I know.
You do it so late in the game, and then you make me do different numbers and different math every time.
Did I do that to you again?
Nothing until he is finished.
It is a 9.38 average between the four of us. To your point on the movie DOA, it is currently available on all of these services: Zumo Play, Tubi, Pluto TV, Sling TV, the Roku channel, and Fandango and Plex for free. It is available on subscription on Philo, YouTube TV, Fubo TV, regular YouTube with a primetime subscription, and MGM Plus.
It's out there. Point being, it's out there.
Cool.
I would recommend both to my 3 co-appearance people as well as to the general public.
That concept reminds me of a George Carlin joke where he talks about the introduction of the concept of the 2-minute warning, where in football you get a 2-minute warning. Hey, it's going to be the end of the game. In your life, right before you die, you hear a voice from the heavens saying, 2 minutes, get your shit together. And then you can go on this huge diatribe about whatever. And then if what I say is not the truth, then may God strike me dead. And then you die. Yeah.
It's way more profound than what I was thinking of because I was just thinking about the movie Crank.
Yeah, that too.
He's been poisoned and he's running around trying not to die.
Yeah.
It's not as good a movie as DOA probably is.
If you need a further selling point, it's 83 minutes.
Ooh,
Love
it.
Which, of all the things you've suggested on this show this season, with the chief among it being the random drop of Edison starring Spencer Tracy.
It's a good film. I always loved watching that film.
I think you're going to have a few people going on to Tubi here during Christmas to watch this.
It's worth it. For 83 minutes. Crepe's sake. It's a good film.
All right, let's move to classicness here. This is a measure of how well the film has aged or not. We started a baseline of 6 because it's usually easier to take points off for things that just have not aged well than it is to necessarily say it was ahead of its time or that it was profound or that it still is relevant. And so with that, I hand it over to our senior nuance correspondent, Dana.
We started at 6, and my God, this thing has so much about this that has prevalence. I mean, this goes back generations. I mean, we're constantly exploring the dynamics involved here. What this film says about the potential physical vulnerability of women. Everything from the creepy, having to have somebody watch your drink in a bar to having to make sure that somebody walks you out. I mean, I don't know if they had student guards at Polite College when you were there. I was a student guard. And one of my responsibilities at that time, this is 1983 to 86, is if a girl called and said she didn't feel safe walking on campus, I would have to go and pick her up and walk her to her dorm. I mean, why should that have to be? So this goes back generations. The only reason I don't give this a full 10 is because it's hard to be classic when there's nothing classic about it. It still continues. It's not necessarily classic. So unfortunately, it's present. So I'm at a 9.5. And the only reason there's a 0.5 deduction is because it's not in past tense.
I gave it a 10 because, again, it's ever present. And until we live in a different kind of world, it's just always going to be something that is a relevant topic. And then as far as like the actual content of the movie, there's nothing to age it. There's no language that's really offensive. There's nobody in here who has since been found to be a really terrible person, and it's hard to watch the movie.
I said before we started recording, if something had come out about Bo Burnham, number one, that'd be a real bummer. And number two, yeah, that would have done it. But so far, nothing. So, yeah, I'm just going to say I gave it a 9. Similar to what you just said about, hey, this is still a thing. At the same time as it's still a thing where we are backsliding to a point. So I wish that a movie like this got out in front of more people to bump that up and just have more awareness that the movie is trying to really put out there, but it's not. So
I apologize that this is not meant to undercut anybody's arguments or do anything differently. Usually this category, you have to have a reason to add points in. And while I don't find there's anything detracting to take points off by any means, I don't find enough reasons to add points on in the traditional sense of what we've normally done. There is not the benefit of time to give it points for timelessness. So, and that's usually where I add some of my most significant points. I think it is still relevant, so I can add a point in for that. I think that it will continue to be relevant. So maybe that's a little bit of a projection on my part, but that usually leaves me, or is going to leave me, at an 8 as opposed to anything higher. And it's just only because this is a 5-year-old film. If this was 15, 20, 25 years, and this is like, wow, my God, this was so ahead of its time. If we revisit this in 5 or 10 years, I think this is going to get a much higher classicness score. But as far as just because of the recency, I have to sit at an 8.
Let me make this point, which is, even though I understand your point and I do respect that point, you have to take a look at it because it not only does it addresses a whole period back when I was a teenager and even earlier than that. And even though that's not technically classicness as we're talking about for the future, what it does is it's refocusing behavior that existed over the last 20, 30, 40 years.
70,
and so to that
80,
extent,
100, 150.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can only talk about what the behavior that I've experienced being a almost 62-year-old man. When by the time this comes out, I will be 62. So I can only go to that extent. And so that's where I'm coming from when I give it the higher marks for classicness, because I think it does change the focus, not only of things going forward, but it forces a look back and going, yeah, a lot of this behavior was kind of not.
But now you're arguing out of both sides of your mouth, because you just said a minute ago, to top off your own comments about backsliding or about that this hasn't changed much or any of the other things. So you can't also say that it's going to be profound in that way, especially partially because not enough people have seen this movie for as quality as I personally believe it is. But it's just not there yet. If it had a wider release, had a more profound impact on people in the way that they consumed film. Let's say this movie was released like 1998. I think this movie is drastically different. And like the reception to it, while it will be controversial, especially if you like put it in the post Monica Lewinsky territory, like this movie has a profound impact on culture. but where it was when it came out has neutered some of the impact, and as a result, and I know we're arguing classicness, not impact and significance, so if you're jumping through your computer screen or your phone or whatever else, or getting into the comments section, understand I know that there are various nuances to what I'm arguing, but you can't also then say that it has this impact of people looking at it and saying these other things, because then that's projecting ahead where we're not currently at as well. So the more recent films are always some of the most difficult to score because of this stuff.
What I would also add into this is, in that same vein, if this came out in 1998, could you extrapolate that and say, where else could you put this movie? Because there's not a whole lot of things here that are very, very modern as far as like technology, which we always talk about in our shows. There's the text messages that are scheduled to go out. There's an equivalent of a MySpace where there's an invite there. What else? Anything?
Not really. No, it's pretty vague for when the movie actually takes place. And I think that's on purpose, because you could assume it's modern day. You could also assume it's 2005.
Yeah. You could reset this movie in a whole lot of different eras and it still works, because the behaviors are the same as they have been for decades.
That is an interesting argument, and one we've not really possessed on the film, where we take a more modern film and we project it backward as opposed to projecting a more mature or older film and projecting it forward. I would say it probably works until you reach roughly the late 60s would be probably the cutoff point for me, where I just don't think you're going to have a receptive audience, nor are you going to get any of the funding to make the film. And if that
true.
Is a factor.
You won't, as far as the men are concerned. The movie maybe doesn't get made, but if women watch this movie in 1960, you can't tell me there's going to be women in the back of the room going, oh, dang, I feel these feelings. I can't share them. I can't say them out loud, but it has had an impact on me. In the skirt-chasing offices of the 1960s, where it was okay to just, slap your secretary on the ass and say, go get me some lunch, sweetheart, and stuff like that.
Well, I think to that degree, then you had the apartment. So that's its own ritual and rite and whatever. But you've also put me in checkmate, because this is yet again another one where I can't really argue with you because I'm not a woman. So
hence my 10. And I will not budge from that number.
So regardless, that is a 9.13 average between the four of us. Rewatchability, insert your own subjective test here. You can use the Kieran B. I know you guys have used like the hotel room test. We've had any number of different people come up with their own. Dad has his tickle my pickle test, or whatever the thing he came up with about a year ago was. I don't even remember.
Talking about.
It was the pickle test, but I call it the tickle my pickle test because it's just funnier. Anyway, but go ahead. What subjective number of rewatchability do you have for this?
So this is the third time, as we said, the third time we have watched this movie in its entirety. I think about this movie more often than I probably should. However, because I cannot have the same kind of physical reaction as I had the first time, because it's not as novel anymore, I put this at an 8. I still really enjoyed the movie today. I enjoyed it the second time. I really enjoyed it the first time. And if I remember right, when we did our year-end awards, not our Oscar special, but our year-end awards that year, I think I had Promising Young Woman as my number one movie that year. Yeah. So, yeah, 8 for me as far as rewatchability. I would absolutely watch this movie again. I would not, however, put it as a really good hotel movie, because I think you need the entirety of it. Hotel movie implies that you can just throw it on and not even pay attention to it and still get something out of it. Betsy?
Oh, goodness. Listen, I love this movie. I really do. And I will give you that when you know what happens at the end, it's not going to pack as much of a punch, but it still packs a punch. So I'm still keeping it high. I'll keep it at a 9.5. Wow. But I won't go the full 10, simply because you're right. Watching it a second time once you know what the expectations are, it's gonna give it a little less.
The smoke's coming out your ears there, Pop.
Yeah, I know. You know, what was the movie was Boyhood, where they took and did the thing with over, you know, so many different things. I would love to watch men watch this movie at age 16, 24, and 35, especially at 35 or 40 if they have daughters. It's going to make a difference in how you watch it.
You would hope so.
You'd hope so. Rewatchability to me, it's very difficult for me to watch this film. Because even though it just, you want to do something, you want to help, you don't, you know, you want to stop, etc. It's very difficult for me to justify my gender's behavior at times. It's also very difficult for me to relive things I've seen or heard or whatever and not feel some level of remorse of whether I should have done something. Okay. But by the same token, it is a film that I think people should watch. And if I had teenage boys, I would probably make them watch it, sit down and watch it with me type of deal. Because this is going to be something that I am going to encourage people to watch and would sit and watch with them, I'm going to give it a 7, which is about where it is for me when I'm in that situation. But this is not going to be something that on a Saturday afternoon, I'm going to just put on and go, hey, I'm feeling like just watching this film.
I think to go along with that, I think the filmmakers here do an excellent job at framing the men, especially in that first opening scene at the bar. They frame these men as ridiculous, and the language that they're using, that they're talking amongst each other with, is this heightened language that you know, it's as if, you know, it's as if a woman wrote the movie. You know, think about that. A woman writes this movie from her own perspective as this is what men talk to each other as. So it's just a heightened version of that. You could say the same thing about other movies and women talking to each other. You know, you just don't get to see that often. So because it's humorous in that way, I think it softens the blow a little bit so that I could go and watch the movie again. But I'm with you, Dana. I think the subject matter here, if you're really, really thinking about it, it gets in your head and you don't want to think about it. But the filmmakers here have done their job.
But as a woman, you have to think about it outside in the real world.
Yes.
All the time. All the time. So throwing on this movie is not that big a deal to me.
Honestly, and I'm going to try and make this as objective as I can, trying to balance the fact that yet again that I'm not a woman here. So before you accuse me yet again, I understand here, and I'm trying my best. A lot of the tack that I've taken this season is to try and step back and do what the category originally called for, which is a little less personal, subjective perspective here, and trying to accommodate for a wide variety of an audience. So a couple of factors in that. I think this is a highly entertaining movie because you have a character somewhat to root for. You have that vengeance plot line. And even no matter who you are, whether you see yourself in the character or not, I think you can root for her even as many times as you might see this, so that there are gradations. There are times where you think she might take it too far. We mentioned the dean's office, but it lets you off the hook there. So from that standpoint, I find this to be a little bit more rewatchable on an entertainment level.
It's also really funny.
It is. It's got good elements of that. I think that the characters are compelling. They're interesting. They are people you want to enjoy and love, whether it's the Ryan character, it's the Cassie character, you know, any number of stars that you're like, oh, I remember that guy. Oh, I remember that guy from this thing. So the casting helps on that. It's also not a terribly long runtime. This is a fairly short, watchable film. So I think that also helps here. What I will say is that I don't have the visceral physical reaction that my dad and Trent are talking about. I'm kind of somewhere in between. I enjoy the film for its better parts, and there are some cringy moments, but it doesn't, like, my skin isn't crawling every time. Like, I recognize it for what it is and can separate out those, but I did have the elements of a horror film, and I think that is broadly popular. I think horror is a broadly popular genre that people can tap into. So from all of those extraneous factors here, I think what I'm going to end up here is at 7.5. I think that's probably justified here. That, again, this is not an issue where once people have seen it, they don't want to watch it again. I think this is more of an issue of people just haven't been exposed to it yet to really have an opinion on whether it's something they want to return to. So that is an 8 average between the four of us. For audience score on this one, we had a 68% for Google users and an 87% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us a 7.85. So to repeat the categories, we had a 5.75 for legacy, a 6.75 for impact and significance, a 9.38 for novelty, a 9.13 for classicness, an 8 for rewatchability, and a 7.85 in audience score, giving us a final total of 46.86, and currently placing it on our list between Chinatown and Rebel Without a Cause at number 130.
Interesting.
Respectable.
That is obviously subject to change since we're recording this so far in advance. I don't know if it'll be at 130 by the time this actually comes out, so caveat there, but still in that general range. So probably about halfway or median point of the list for what we have so far through 264 films. But if you have any complaints, thoughts, commentary, negative or otherwise, if you want to criticize me for not being a woman, I completely understand, but you could do so at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on any of our socials at Gmode Podcast, or you can find us at RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmode Podcast. Let's move to a few quick remaining questions for this one. How does Nina die?
It mentions suicide.
Does it? I don't remember that coming up.
I don't think they ever explicitly say it. I think they give you enough to infer it, though.
The only time anybody talks about her being dead is when Al mentions it when he's tied up on the bed.
Yeah.
Right.
It can't be her. She's dead.
Yeah.
I think that everything up until then, you're still wondering if I think you're supposed to assume she's dead, but it's never confirmed until that point, even at the point where she's at the mother's house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I would agree. The most likely answer is suicide, because if it's that bothering her that badly, like, she must be in a mental torture, and the only way out, or the only way she would have died, is because of that. But
or at the very least, you can infer she developed a problem with alcohol, drugs, whatever it happens to be, and being in a medical field, you have access to materials,
and you know the balances, and you understand how it works.
It's going to take. So,
right.
Access. And not to get too dark here, but yeah, I feel like that is the most likely result of Nina. And I do not want to talk about the methods by which that would have happened, but it's pretty apparent that the overhanging cloud is suicide the rest of the way. Like Dana says, this is a movie about suicide, not only for the person who is already dead, but also Cassie at the same time. As far as she's concerned, she's already kind of dead because all of the life is already drained out of her.
Yeah, Cassie's metaphorically dead already.
Yeah.
A question that literally only just occurred to me. Does any of the cast of characters we meet from mid school go to Nina's funeral?
Probably not, since all of them conveniently forgot who she was.
Yeah.
Why?
Think about all the people at the wedding. Any of those people ever go?
We're looking at it as being viable, thoughtful, caring humans. Yet we're not being the superficial blowguts that many of them really were. I would say that there were some that did.
Yeah.
Simply because they're going to pretend that somehow or another that they just don't understand. So they're there because they have no choice but to be there because, this is what is expected, because we're going to carry on this superficial bullshit that this is just a tragedy that has nothing to do with any behavior that I was involved in.
All right. My other remaining question outside of those, how many other people are charged in the conspiracy? I think we kind of got on some of these, but I would guess that you have at least 2 in both. Is it Joe? I think it's Joe.
That's not a conspiracy. His was overt act.
Right. And then you've got Al, who's obviously got, so that's 2. So then you're looking at how many tangentially beyond that. I don't know if you could charge anybody else technically at the bachelor party if they didn't know necessarily, but anybody who saw the video, theoretically you could.
I think the video...
It's not happening.
Yeah, the video just proves they're all terrible people, but they're probably not going to suffer any consequences from it.
Yeah.
As far as prison time
I
would be
think
concerned.
When the detective comes to visit Bo Burnham, I feel like even the detective himself is asking leading questions in order to get to a place where I can ignore this. You had nothing to do with it. Of course you didn't. You're a pediatrician.
You're a pediatric surgeon, man. Like, you wouldn't do anything bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, she was acting crazy, right? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very crazy.
Now, obstruction? Yes.
Yeah.
Because he did lie to the officer. Do you have any idea, where she might have been? No, none at all.
And if
he knew exactly where she was going.
If they start prying, they might take him down too.
Yeah. So I think minimally 2. I think it could be much higher, potentially. All right. Any remaining questions for any of you?
I just wanted to mention the fact that there is 2 different references here to the movie Night of the Hunter. And we were kind of talking during a break about the fact that Betsy and I just watched that movie for the first time this year. Not for any of our podcasts. We just happened to see it. And it's really strange that the parents are watching that movie. I want to know what Emerald Fennell is taking out of that. What was the inspirations she was taking out of that movie and applying it to this movie? Because there's also a reference here, like the song. It's after she watches the movie for the first time, the video for the first time. She goes outside and she's crying next to a tree. There's a song being played here from that movie.
It's the lullaby.
The lullaby where the little kid is singing.
I, of course, didn't know the first 2 times I watched this. So clearly she is drawing from that movie particular.
Yeah.
I would just say it's likely the predatory aspect of the film, that it's preying on somebody. I mean, the reference to them all being kids, I take somewhat true. It doesn't mean you're absolved from your actions because of that, but it also means that most of them, if they were very early on in their med school career, probably haven't had the fully formed maturity that you get by the time you hit 25. And so even from that standpoint, it's predatory behavior on children. So does this movie somehow fit between those 2 narratives? All right. So I want to thank both of our guests for being back with us yet again for their 3rd time. I hope you enjoyed your time. I know we did. But again, remind the audience here what you're working on and where they can find you.
So we are Never Seen It with Betsy and Trent, of course, on podcast services worldwide. We just started being on YouTube and TikTok just a little while ago, so that's been a new experience for us. As far as what you can expect from us, the one rule about the show is we cover a movie that neither of us have seen. We sit down, do a recording, do an introduction as to what we think we know about the movie. We take a break, we go and watch it and give our immediate reaction. This varies from every single genre out there. Every October we do Never Scream It, of course, that is already over, but there's 5 years worth of that already out there. as of recording, I think by the time we get done with the year, we'll be close to 385 episodes of different movies that we have covered. We also have a Patreon where we cover movies as well, but we have just some more fun stuff over at Patreon. That is patreon.com/neverseenitpod.
And as far as upcoming stuff, like we touched on, we're going to be working into the awards season and Oscar nominees. But then we're trying to figure out what to do after Oscars, because once we've done the highbrow stuff, we like to go into the gutter and do something ridiculous. The last 2 years, we've done things like bad movies. We did bad movies this year. And then the year before we did Stripper Sunday. Yeah. So it'll probably be something in that vein where we just watch some trashy movies just for fun.
Frat house movies.
I've been trying to get him to do When Animals Attack. But we haven't quite fleshed it out yet.
Yeah, we need to do that.
But it's going to be something in that vein where it's just like, okay, we've given out the Oscars and now some garbage.
Yes, Kieran B., a friend of the show, and Tom and I have a running bet with the Giants and the Packers. And Tom left me in charge of picking the movie that he has to watch if the Packers win. Terror in Tiny Town. It is a 1939 all-midget cast of a Western.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Ed Wood month?
Oh, there you go.
We do want people to listen to it. I don't know.
The various movies of Nicolas Cage.
We already did a Cage-a-thon.
We could do another one. Surely his bad ones.
We could do the bad stuff.
Bangkok Dangerous coming your way 2026.
Yeah.
Bad accent movies.
Mm-hmm.
So you could do Mary Poppins. You could do half of Tom Hanks's films where he's playing somebody from New England.
True.
Last year we did Hanksgiving, so we covered a bunch of Tom Hanks already.
Fair enough. But
we
again,
like to have fun. We like to mix things up. Betsy and I are married. I don't know if you
Wait, we're married?
We're married. Been married now for 13 years as of when this episode comes out. So yeah, we have a lot of fun here. We're from South Dakota, so we're trying to be at least a little bit inoffensive and, appealing to a lot of people, but we say fuck a lot.
Oh no. How dare you?
Yeah.
All right. But thank you again for being on with us for this final episode of the season. Dad, any remaining thoughts that you want to have 2 months in advance of when this episode will come out, but for the end of the year?
Well, let's just say we usually insert like the in memoriam, don't we?
Yes.
So should we like insert also our Christmas and New Year's greetings at that time?
I suppose that would make sense.
Then that's the case. Then I don't really have anything more to add.
Okay. One small piece of housekeeping. During the break here, we will have a live episode, which will take you behind the scenes of how the sausage is made, giving you our scheduling for 2027 as I read Dana a very long list of films that he gets to pick from, and he will rate them 1 out of 5 stars as to his desire to want to do them on the show. And then I will slowly slot those all in to our 2027 schedule. I believe that's season 8. But if you want to catch that, I think that is going to be in this next coming week or so, in between Christmas and New Year's. Just something for people to, apparently there was some interest in watching us do this process, mostly to make fun of us. But
I have thought about doing a production meeting episode where literally Betsy and I are talking about what our next series are going to be. I think that would be incredible content.
I think that this episode should have, so that if you want to send in like criticism, feeds, questions, etc., and then we just spend a few minutes each or in between things and read some of them and see how much they just rip me a new asshole.
Corrections and objections.
Yeah.
But again, that's going to be on our live YouTube channel. So youtube.com/ at Gmode Podcast if you want to catch that live or even after the fact. That will not be on the main feed or in any of the audio content versions. You will have to go over to YouTube for that. We're trying to do some more live content to try and spruce up the channel a little bit and get people drawn over there a few more times. But otherwise, that'll do it for us this season. We'll see you next year. Thank you for your trouble. I'm sure you meant well. Not at all. I like trouble. Next year, for our 295th episode, we welcome back Mike Emmel of Cinemus to discuss Sabotage from 1936, celebrating its 90th anniversary. Directed by Alfred Hitchcock, written by Charles Burnett. Cinematography by Bernard Knowles, music by Jack Beaver. Starring Sylvia Sidney, Oscar Homolka, and John Loder. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at greatestaltimemmoviepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle at @GModePodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ryan Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.